Hello, and welcome to Spotlight, the official podcast of GRAPPL. I'm Benno.
I'm JP.
And I'm Gareth.
It's like going back in time, lads. Like that's how I felt. No, that felt like it was 2021 again. Back when AEW was good. Great to have you back, Gareth, on the show.
I always turn up when AEW is good.
That's it. Or when we got to put the boot in, it's one or the other, isn't it? We've done many of these types of shows where we've done the assassination Hangman Page by the coward Benson Richards. What was the other one we did with like an AEW half year in review? We get you in, Gareth, when we're going to do these big time interventions in both positive and negative senses, as we will probably discuss today. But that's the thing, Gareth. We get when you're not just here to get pissed on Patreon shows. You're here to talk some sense to us all and to put the world to rights when it comes to AEW. The big important shows. That's when we get Gareth.
I love this. This is my favorite stuff, isn't it? Trying to think about like the, big picture stuff, but then just like getting into the weeds of different things as well. Like it's always the stuff that I'm interested in doing, and it's a good moment in time as well, where I'm actually absolutely 100% up to date with AEW as well. So you've got to take these opportunities while you can. I've been totally unavailable to do a show for the past 3 months because I've been about
once a year.
3 months behind. Like,
the other week you were thinking of giving up on AEW. Yeah, there you go. You were thinking of quitting at one point, Gareth. You were gonna. We thought we'd lost you for good, like 4 or 5 weeks ago, something like that. Like I remember you saying. I think when we were out on that night out, when we were talking about it, like you were just like, "Yeah, don't think I'm gonna bother." Because that's the thing about Gareth. I think our listeners understand. Like me and JP can be like, nothing going on Rampage this week. Like I'll watch the 15-minute version on YouTube, or I'll liberally skip through it, or like Collision this week is a taped one, so do I really need to see it? None of that with Gareth. You're watching every minute, regardless. I think that might explain why a few weeks ago you were thinking of throwing the towel in. You're a completist or nothing, mate. You're a Dark and Elevation guy back on the day. No, you didn't go that far.
No, it's bad enough putting that into the fucking spreadsheets to put on the app. Never mind actually watching the fucker. But it was keep it as long as it's the main shows. I'm going to kind of watch every minute, and yeah, I don't know if we're you
right
say there about that. Like 4 or 5 weeks ago, I was fucking absolutely done. Like I'd think I had about like 3 or 4 weeks to catch up on. I like put loads of time into it was basically when I wasn't doing something, I was watching AEW, like catching up on it, and I just got to the point where it's Wrestle Dream. I think Wrestle Dream took me a whole week to watch, and then I was just like, I'm fucking done. And like me and Matty were having a big like conversation on chat one night, and like
that's the wrong person to talk to. You're thinking of being done with AEW. He'll push you over that ledge, mate.
Well, it was just like I was just saying everything that he was saying, like in agreement as well. I was just watching it, thinking this is absolute shite. Like it's a load of crap, and it's not just because I've watched like 3 or 4 weeks worth in a consolidated time periods, and like you were sort of like bored with it. I was just like staring blankly at like there was like matches going on with like wrestlers that you liked and things like that, and it was just like just terrible. I was just like, why am I wasting my ass with this? And to be honest, I said to Matty, I'm going to get up to date because I want to come on Spotlight and fucking tear the ass out of it. However, 4 or 5 weeks have passed since then, and maybe I've got a different opinion by now, Benno. So we can get into
that. Yeah, well, I think the overall consensus, I think, on AEW, and I think this is maybe want to be like a bit of your point as well, is just generally negative. Like for you, JP, you're like me. You consume a lot of audio. I listen to Voices of Wrestling. I listen to Post. I listen to Observer. I listen to Wade Keller. I listen to Todd Martin. I listen to the What Culture lads. Like pretty much everybody, though, to a man. And I've said this to you a few times. Like I don't think they all agree. I think everyone's got different reasons why they like it or dislike it. A lot of things people are saying sound like things we would have said about AEW 2 years ago that some of the people I just mentioned would have argued with us about and go, no, that's not the case. There's no way. And it almost feels like, eventually with time, I'm not saying we were born out to be right, but with time, people have maybe joined our side of the fence. But I can't think of any audio or any pundit or really anyone in this space who really has much positive to say overall about AEW. Obviously, there's individual shows like we just did the weekend show for those who aren't patrons. The full Dynamite reviews go up on our YouTube from the weekend show pretty much every week. I would say we were more positive for that show than we've been in a while. Maybe me more than you, just about. But I think you had, as much good as you did bad to say. There are certainly those weeks, aren't there, where you can pull out, the different positives, and there are different matches that we really like, and there are different, elements and things. Oh, they're doing that. Oh, they're paying it. They haven't forgotten about Swerve Strickland, or they haven't forgotten about, insert wrestler here, that we'll pick out and point out, and the podcast I listed them will pick out and point out. But overwhelmingly, it does feel like there's a dark cloud over AEW of like everyone is feeling, and it not necessarily everyone has the same exact take on it, but everyone seems to have that consensus take that something is wrong, and you don't really get positive AEW audio, I don't think, out there right now.
But it's hard because this was a real struggle to kind of even just make notes for, like you say, because it's like we all generally feel the same way, as in it's lost something. However, it's very subjective, the reasons for what we all think we lost from it. And I think that's part of possibly the issue with AEW as a company. At the beginning, to a certain degree, it was all things to all people, wasn't it? It was there catering different kind of fan bases and different stuff, which kind of has always made it had a disjointed feel. And I think where we are, like you say about like the kind of the different criticisms of it, the one thing we're all agreed is it's not hot. And I think that's something that we were quite, and this is the thing with Gareth being here, very quickly it was like, yeah, year on year, this is down. This is losing something. And we all couldn't really put a finger on why. And I think as time has gone on, when you say that, like, kind of the things that we've predicted, it's a lot of these things are like self-inflicted. And if they were on top of the product, they'd be picking up on, and they haven't, and they've let rip. And I think when we talk about the TV in particular, it's become quite unimportant. There's a reason why we can miss shows. Gareth, the completist, won't allow himself to, but there's a reason why, Gareth, you end up with backlogs, because it isn't appointment viewing. And there's a whole load of reasons for things that I've written down that hopefully we'll end up going into for it as well. And, like I say, I know that there are lots of like various bits of criticism for it. So if you're the kind of person who doesn't like criticism necessarily of AEW, I think they have to understand the place that we're all coming from. We don't want it to die. However, if some of this shit doesn't get sorted out, like, it's not going to be in a great place. And, like say, it's like from a creative perspective, and trying to and it's about almost trying to see about if there's something that can be done to like kind of rejig it almost. But of all the years it's had, this has been, like, from a creative aspect, I'd say it's been the worst.
Now,
Yeah,
I don't want to appear like I'm just been the contrarian. Like, I would probably, I don't know, I think at the time, it was probably when I was still regularly doing Spotlight, that I would probably say I was the first of the three of us to start getting a bit negative about things, and like was started to sort of flag some stuff. I know I was getting a bit of grief online and stuff like that with some of my opinions and things like that. Like back at the time when it was everything's rosy in the AEW garden, and I felt like
you didn't get grief, we all did, because it's never one person's opinion, is it? GRAPPL said, and it's like, well, hang on, there's three of us. Like, we've got distinct, unique opinions on stuff.
It's not fucking Minority Report. We're not sharing brains in a bloody swimming pool, are we?
Yeah, and it's not just us. You get that Voices of Wrestling said. It's like, well, did Lanza say it? Did Craig say it? Did Suit Williams say it on Twitter? You know what I mean? Like, but you get that. That's going to come. That's coming regardless of what we say here, mate. So don't worry about it.
But I'm going to go wildly the other way. I think the last month or 6 weeks of AEW since Wrestle Dream has been the best that AEW has been booked for 2 years. I honestly, genuinely believe it. Like, I think I've enjoyed the product week to week to week, show to show to show across the 3 shows in this 6 week period more than I have done since CM Punk first joined the company, and that was like purely based on CM Punk. I think it feels to me like you might tell me I'm deluded for the next 2 hours, but it feels to me like there's been a big reset button pressed, like almost like at the point of Wrestle Dream or after Wrestle Dream. Now, I've talked plenty about how I'd lost confidence in Tony Khan as a booker for a couple of years. Don't believe he's a good booker necessarily, but something feels very different to me in the last 5 or 6 weeks, and I don't know if there's somebody on board internally who's working with him, or I don't know if the keys have been handed over to some different elements or something like that, or whether he's actually taken the year-on-year decline in ratings on board and the negative creative criticism and things like that that's come over the last 2 years. I don't know if it's just a byproduct of the CM Punk problem just going out of the way, so now he doesn't have to worry about having people on specific shows and mixing things up and booking to various people internally. But like, it feels to me like it's the most cohesive the booking has been in such a long time, with so much going on, like so many elements of different storylines going on and things like that, and getting wrestlers been on screen for a consistent period and doing positive things, and even the ones who are maybe lesser been intertwined into some of those things as well. Like, I'm going to be the contrarian prick again, but in a positive way here, because I've got a lot. I feel like there's a lot to say on those different elements, but I don't know. I get the feeling from listening to you two guys that Benno's somewhere in the middle and JP's further at the other end of the spectrum. There, I think I almost feel like I can feel that fatigue in your voice, JP, when you're talking about it, and there's the things there that are just like, you're just not reacting positively to, or there's almost like your brains immediately just go into that could have been better, or things like that, or just skip some of the elements there that are maybe not executed as you quite would want. I can kind of see a bit of that with you, Benno, from listening the last few weeks, but I think there's definitely been those high spots along the way that, like, for you has ticked positive boxes for you in the same way that like negative elements have pissed you off, or you think things could have been better. But it's just interesting, because I think, like you say, there's a lot of negativity out there at the moment, and for lots of different reasons. I think there's people saying lots of different like negative things. Sometimes I go online and I just see people massively negative, and then I watch the show and it's like over something that was on screen for 1 minute, and I'm like, come on, there was another hour and 59 minutes there of other stuff, kind of thing, that should really the focus be on that. But I almost feel like we're getting into a bit of like LOL TNA territory, where there's almost this like online pile-on that people can't wait for some slightly negative thing to happen on one of the AEW shows, so they can kind of like jump on it and like use it as a reason to beat the company or beat Tony Khan and things. And yeah, I'll hold my hands up. I've done that plenty in the past. But it's interesting. It's an interesting point that the company's at, because I think, again, we always talk about, going back to WCW days, the crowds were still good, or the TV ratings were still good, even when the company had gone to shit, kind of thing. And that lag coming, like you say, we were talking about AEW being on the downswing 2 years ago, and then the decline in TV ratings has followed since. Be interesting to see if what I perceive here to be a reset or a pushing of the button of something new is something that in 2 months' time I still feel like that or not, or if it is just going to feel like a bit of a blip to me, or is this the start of something that's going to lead to a positive upturn maybe further down the line? I don't know. Maybe the ship's turned too far one way that it can't be turned back quickly. I don't know, but we'll get into the weeds of all that today, won't we?
Love it.
Yeah,
I almost want to say JP counter, but
my counter would just be one sort of simple point. There's stuff there that, like, in the main, I kind of get, and sometimes there is just like the overall fatigue of it, because we're always generally watching it. Although weirdly, I have to say, I watched Collision this week and found it to be like a perfectly, like, as I do with Collision for the most part, I find it like, for the most part, like this affable 2 hours that I can watch. But I think it's less of a like that they're getting things right or a reset. I think there is the acknowledgement internally since Wrestle Dream that something's gone wrong. Like, I think there's that, and that's important, because
this week
the first step in admitting you have a problem is admitting you have a problem. And I think we're at that point where they're admitting that they have a problem.
I was
And
just going to say, JP, like even this week, there's been reports, hasn't there, of like, come to Jesus meetings, whether you believe Kenny Omega was there or the Young Bucks were there, but like literally as of this week, like, people come to Tony Khan and go, we need to change this round. Like things aren't feeling right. Like we're hearing those
yeah,
types of reports. Sorry, go ahead.
no, and I think that's been a long time coming. And my major criticism of like the reason why this is happening is it'll be one of the major points. There are like, in terms of on-screen characters in some way, shape, or form, there's 200 people and there's 5
Yeah.
hours of TV a week. Yet what they all do is ultimately hinging on one person and how they feel about it. And they're like managing all of this in their brain. And when you look at that, you think something's going to go wrong at some point. You need to find a way of delegation or like a different sort of level of responsibility. And I think when it comes to some of the problems, it's like these were growing. It's like looking at them as a business. And I'll probably secede any knowledge of this over to Gareth for someone who actually kind of like runs a business. But it's the idea that these are the kind of growing pains and it's how they deal with them. And I keep on banging on about infrastructure. And that also means kind of voices in the room. And I think the thing that then they need to do is get voices with different kinds of influences. But again, these are things we'll get into the weeds on when we're talking about certain aspects.
For me as an overall, I would say like I agree. There's definitely and again, it's one of those things, isn't it, where like if enough people are saying the same thing that they're exhausted with it, or the amount of people we speak to, maybe it's just our bubble, but are just like, once All In happened, they were like, done now, I'm just gonna take a break from AEW. Like I've heard that from so many people. Like there is a consensus for a reason. And I think whether you agree with the ins and outs of why people think the product has, gone off course, you can't really deny that there is that strength of feeling that that's happened. Like I think that it becomes reality, doesn't it? At that point. And it's like it's funny because like Gareth said there, I sit somewhere in the middle. Like I think it's like I'd never want to treat AEW like it's WWE, because like when it comes to WWE criticism, we all treat it at arm's length. Like we've learned that lesson over 20 years. It's definitely gotten better in the last year or so, and they are, to a point somebody mentioned in the chat before about AEW. They're getting a lot of plaudits for just doing the basics right at this point, because there was 20 years of it being shit. And I hear that. I hear people say sometimes, "Oh, you're almost harsher on AEW than you are WWE." And it's like, yeah, because we care about AEW. Like the care has been beaten out of me with WWE. Like I could sit here and make the same complaints I've made for 20 years about how they construct the backstage segments and the wrestling style and the promos and all of that, but like week on week that gets boring. But I don't want to get to that position with AEW either, because I think it should be something that stands up to scrutiny. It should be a company that we can talk about with this passion and have these strong positives and negative opinions. It'd be easy to brush aside some of my major criticisms that you mentioned there, JP. The too many wrestlers and the too much TV things. Like I know that's just the world we're in now. He signed the wrestlers and he's got the TV deals, so that's it. And that never really holds much weight with me, because I was like, well, no, they made that decision. They still deserve criticism for it. I don't want to ever get to a position where it's like you can't criticize them for that anymore, because they're doing the best with what they've got. Because what they've got is of their own making in a lot of ways as well. So I that's why I sit somewhere in the middle. Like I don't fully 100% subscribe to like what Garrett's saying, or 100% subscribe to what you're saying, JP. But like I do think there has to be higher standards for this. Otherwise, what's the point, really? It is caring that so much about it.
Then, if that's the case, if we were like, if we didn't hold it to these high standards, and that's the reason why criticism exists in the first place. Like, if I didn't care about this, then we wouldn't be doing this type of a show. Like, why would we bother in the first place? We're doing it because we care. And like you say with WWE, it's been beaten out of us. Like it had. I mean, God, it went not long after the invasion angle. Like you can't imagine how, like, for someone who loved ECW and WCW, just how scarring that was, of just like what, and just the same kind of repetitive nonsense and so on and so forth. At the same time, we have to kind of give it credit when it does stuff in like a sane, logical way, because that's been what's missing from that particular product. But I think also with AEW, there is so much, because so much of it's wrapped up in Tony Khan, and there was the idea that for the hardcore fan, his brain was like us, and we all knew how to run the wrestling business because we read the Observer newsletter, and we were hardcore fans and on forums and having these conversations and taking, people were taking wrestling far too seriously. He was one of those people. So when you see errors being made, like, you're like, no, you're not meant to do that. You're cleverer than that. You're not meant to fall into the trap that, like, this is what a WWE would do. So when you see that happening, you're going to be harsher, because it's like it kind of, there is a weight of history. There is things that you can say, actually, we shouldn't be doing this because there is historical precedent that says if we do this, it leads down quite a bad path. And when you see them do things like, I don't know, the signing of Ric Flair as well, and then, like, say, with a lot of the criticisms that will end up happening, you're just like, no, you're not meant to do. You were meant to be the smart ones, and you had an advantage because the other place was run by a psychopath. Now he's gone. You're like, shit. Like, there's people at least who are sane, as much as people who spent a lifetime in the WWE system can be. But at least they're kind of like, they're running it in the right direction, which kind of means you need AEW to be all guns firing, because
that's been a big thing
with WWE is they're fucking vindictive and they'll do their best to take them out. And I don't know if I want to go through any of that shit again. I'm not saying like it is WCW and it's going to end up dying, because the money and the metrics are different in this day and age. But we've seen what happened when WWE is so far ahead. Like, we've seen it with TNA. It's after a while, you're just like, it's never going to get anywhere reasonably close to it. You don't want to see that happen.
Yeah,
and I think this is where expectations need to come in as well, and like, we're definitely guilty of it. Like, I remember being back in the day sat here and like looking at the TV ratings, and Raw was going down and Dynamite was going up, and I was like plotting it out and thinking about like, oh, by this month, like, it could be beating Raw in the ratings, and you get so captured like mentally with the idea of beating WWE, kind of, that like sometimes you've almost kind of got to like take that step back away from it, really. And you're like, I often just think of it in terms of now, retrospectively, things like, TV shows that were good that you enjoyed before they became mass market, or music bands, things that were good before they became mass market. And then the problem is once you kind of get that whole thing of trying to be number one, and money then enters the mix as well, and you're chasing the best TV deal, or you're chasing as much money as you can get, that's when that kind of like quality financial sort of like dichotomy comes in, doesn't it? Because like, naturally, Tony Khan wants to make as much money as he can out of AEW. That's why Collision gets added to the mix. That's why why Rampage gets added to the mix. More TV time, but bigger TV deal, more ad revenue and things like that can be generated. Like the Dynamite product, if you think about it, back in the day there where he was booking a 2-hour show, like, that's only like 40% of what he's booking now as a whole, sort of thing. So it's so small once you add those two other like elements to the mix. And I think that's when we probably started to talk about the downturn a bit more. It was when that increased TV time started to come in, when suddenly you have to think about that extra show. Suddenly he's having to think about, well, is this guy on Dynamite, or is he going to be on Rampage, or does this bleed into that show? And like, obviously Rampage had big stuff, didn't it? Back, the Punk debut obviously was on Rampage and things like that as well. So they were trying to, split some of the good stuff between the two. But as soon as you start to get into the territory where one show is definitely your A show and one show is definitely your B show, then you're sort of like duty bound, really, to try and put your best stuff on the A show, and then the B show is only going to go one way, doesn't it? When you start to do that, because if less people are watching, you don't want to be putting your best stuff on the show that nobody's watching. When you add a Collision into the mix as well, and then suddenly it becomes ABC, and then you're trying to like book, okay, well, he's our gang of guys that we try to book on this one show, and like you're splitting it between the two. Suddenly it's almost like you're trying to book two promotions in your mind, but there's got to be a bit of cross-pollination between the two as well, naturally, because at a lower level, you're going to need people on different shows. So I just think while Tony Khan's booking has never felt the best to me, I don't think he's had any favours done or he's done any favors for himself by doing it in that way of adding that extra TV, because the complexity and crossover that he's put into the mix, like, you know, we've all played EWR. Suddenly, it's try and book 5 hours of TV on a computer game, like over a 3-month period. It's fucking impossible, you know. It's bloody hard, like it's like consume to do it in real life with real things where you try to make all metrics move in the right direction, keep everybody happy, keep TV ratings going up and in the right direction. Like, it just feels a little bit like too much too soon kind of thing. And I don't think they'd got themselves into a position where Dynamite had even successfully established itself at the peak that Dynamite could be before they then throw in the others in the mix. If you think about the time when SmackDown, say, got added with Raw, like, it was fucking so established. It was absolutely gangbusters from a ratings point of view. There was that clamour that there was that need for that extra show at the time and things. I just don't think AEW had that. And it's just, you know, it's almost like look after what's close to home that you're trying to grow first before you try and go after absolutely everything. And that's when the rot started to set in, really. And then when you're talking there about, like, obviously, you know, people, you know, I'm definitely one of them, in the run up to All In and stuff like that. You know, I was sat there in Wembley thinking, yeah, this might be it, kind of thing. Like, this could be the little kind of punctuation point here on my AEW fandom for a while and stuff. And that's because it had been absolutely shit. Like, for the booking was awful. And then, but you talk, like you say about, like, me being like a completist, like, other people aren't, like, kind of thing. There's people here who will just not watch Dynamite and Collision and things like that for 3 weeks, and suddenly they're just gone. And then, like, the hard work is like getting them back this period there, where, because I've just stuck with it for a little bit longer, and I'm starting to feel like a bit of an uplift and a benefit. There's people out there who've just gone, turned it off, don't need to worry about this. 2 consecutive years of Q3 double-digit decline. You know, they've hemorrhaged nearly 160,000, 180,000 viewers on average live from Dynamite to what they were doing 2 years ago. Like, how do you get them back? You know, if say if they're online, all the readings, everyone going, yeah, no, AW shit. Like, it's just it's a massively uphill task that they've got to, you know, turn the tanker around.
There's 2 very distinct arguments, I think, like, at the crux of what you're saying. There's the business argument, conversation we can have, and there's the just general, you know, creative, are we enjoying the show thing? And in online discourse and in just analysing this stuff, the 2 things get conflated. That's just kind of like how it is, isn't it? But I think we can still have those 2 distinct conversations, because I think from what you're saying there, Gareth, I think, you know, you probably maybe agree with me that, like, well, the fact that they've added all that TV time, the fact that they've signed all those wrestlers, I mean, they don't get a pass for that for me. That's their decision. They've taken that decision. They've gone with that. Like, that is, you know, the cause of a lot of problems, but they still deserve criticism for that. It's like you said there as well about, like, you know, it wasn't long ago. You know, we forget it now, but Dynamite was in the demo in a couple of weeks running Raw close, if not beating them at points. We did have those conversations about catch and Raw. And even if we can say, okay, yeah, realistically, you know, was it ever really going to happen? We can maybe say that with the benefit of hindsight, but they were damn sure a lot closer than they are now. And that's, you know, something you've been consistent about when we've had you on the show, the year-on-year decline. I was on Fightful today looking at just getting news stories for the end of this show, and I just happened to click on, there was an article with, like, the Rampage viewership, and it was like, you know, the first 4 months of Rampage is like in that 5 to 700,000 range, depending on whether CM Punk was there or not. But, you know, the numbers were 5s and 6s and even 7s. They weren't 2s and 3s, you know, that they are now. And that decline has happened, and it's something you've been quite vocal about. But I think on the flip side of it, we can't pretend that, like, that isn't, you know, of their own doing, and we can't, you know, move away from the fact that, like, they were in that position, like you've just said, and they were in a strong position, and they were establishing Dynamite. And it's like, it always reminds me of the 3-hour Raw conversation. Like, how many times you hear people in creative go, but it's 3 hours, you know, we can't do a good 3-hour show. It's like, right, cool. Well, you know, Vince McMahon shouldn't have took the extra hour then. Like, Wade Keller always make that point. I know he's a touch point for a lot of people, but it's like, you know, okay, it can be 3 hours. Why can't it be 4? Why can't it be 5? Because clearly there's a cutoff point of what would be reasonable for providing a good creative product. And I think they've absolutely, and I think it speaks to a lot of people's exhaustion with the product past that point. Whether it was when they added Rampage, whether when they added Collision, they have really these wounds are pretty much self-inflicted, I would say. And you've got a booking in Tony Khan, who I think, I know you're saying you've enjoyed the last 6 weeks or so, but I think broad strokes hasn't managed that well. Maybe it's an impossible task, but he hasn't, been a good enough booker to manage that workload and to deal with that volume of content that he's got to deliver.
And that's it. And sometimes a success, like sometimes a business has just got to say no. Like from a business standpoint, you've got to look at that big picture, and you've got to is there money to be made? Like, yes, but is that something that's going to be? Is it short-term money? Is it something that is it in the best interest of the company as a whole? 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, to take that decision now? And I think they've said yes too often, and like you say, yeah, it's of their own doing in terms of the the TV and saying yes, and yeah, we'll have that extra time. I think sometimes maybe the brand's been forced a little bit with the Punk situation and trying to separate the two in some way there internally, but just saying yes to too many wrestlers is again has been a big part of it, and trying to incorporate so many different people, as JP says there, like 200 people on the roster and things. Like, even with 5 hours, like, how do you do that? But then suddenly when you've got this many names bought, and you've presumably got people backstage in your ear saying, like, am I on TV this week? Am I on TV? When am I going to be on TV? And things like that. Then you're getting the opportunity to put more TV time out there, add an ROH to the mix and things like that as well. Mm-hmm. Then suddenly you think, oh, well, I'm giving these TV time, but then you're just spreading this audience like that thin, and that's when the negatives start to.
Tony Khan he's a typical millionaire in that he can't, like, he's never had restrictions in his life. So, like, when he wanted something, he got it. He wanted more wrestlers, he got them. Adam Copeland, someone's probably going to come today. He wanted them, so he got them. You know what I mean? Despite, when you look at the numbers, is there actually a business argument for having in the company outside of a couple of decent, YouTube clips? Like, he hasn't got, it's even down to belts. Like, that surprised me about a lot of the discourse. I think finally people are on board with us when it comes to the belt thing. And everyone, a big criticism you see is complaining about people getting title shots for not much, or title shots when they've just lost the title shot, or they haven't won a match since February, stuff like that. Well, I'm sorry, lads, but that's not unrelated to the fact that we were kicking off 2 years ago about the fact that there's just too many belts, and when you've got that many belts and that many wrestlers, you literally can't make it so that they make logical sense when someone gets a title shot, because every other match is going to have a belt in it, just by design. By you doing that, you've created your own problem. Again, you add ROH to the mix as well, and the Samoa Joe problem that they tried to resolve this week with taking the TV belt off him. That was of course, you're going to run into situations where people you want to put in one situation have already got a belt, because you've got 30 belts in the company. These two things run into each other because they're not unrelated ideas. It's all that almost summarizes it a lot. It's too much. It's just he wants more of everything, and has never had someone said no, or has never taken that bird's eye view of, like, that's a nice short-term game, or wouldn't it be fun to have a tournament for this new title, or wouldn't it be fun to be the owner of ROH? But the collation of all of these things is, I think, a big part of, wherever your take is, a cause of a lot of the issues that we're dealing with today.
Yeah, I think there's an issue in the brain trust there, isn't it? Like, because I think it's interesting. Like, a lot of what I was going to say, a lot of the notes I've got kind of written down as I was thinking about this, going, well, actually, this is a TV show that competes against other TV shows. So in some ways, we need to kind of view it as it is. Because I think that the other thing we've learned with some of the ratings is that great wrestling will only draw so much. You have to have a reason ultimately, and that's where you get into storylines and the kind of character aspects to make people want to see those matches. And that's a lot of kind of what has disappeared. And then I remember making the point quite a while ago of just going, we've kind of gotten rid of storylines. We've just replaced it with belts. We've replaced it with tournaments, titles, because it was easy kind of like ways around it. But the fact
I'm excited for the Tone one, by the way. I'm looking forward to that. That'll be good.
With the Tone one.
Yeah.
Any other week, that's a great title. But it's one of the things, and I think, it's like they took this. It's like, as a TV show, it's like a TV show that was getting hot, and then suddenly they made loads of spin-offs, from it in Collision, in Rampage, then in Collision, and yet we haven't established the kind of main core show as kind of like a TV entity. And I think this is the other problem, is that this comes about like WWE kind of, we've seen it exists in its own kind of silo where the people who watch that are so massively into that, and it's just like it's programmed into their brains. AEW, there's always been a thing where it used to lose its audience a lot to news events. So it was like it was an audience who were interested in other things. So the likelihood is at some point in their lives they would have seen good TV. And we live in the golden age of television for the last 20 odd years. We bang on about it all the time. So we know about plot and narrative. We're a very media literate audience. And you always suspect that with AEW. So part of the thing that they should have recognized when they got this TV program is we're going to need different kind of stories, and we're going to have to think about whether or not are these spin-offs going to have a different kind of identity or something different or something unique to it. And I think other than music and a few kind of like very like kind of shallow ways they've made some changes, but ultimately it always feels like the same type of product made in the same kind of way. And there's going to be that fatigue. Yet they should have known this. This isn't new stuff. We saw it with Thunder, with WCW. There was the kind of story of like, yeah, they're being given these hours by Turner to put on TV, but they never kind of did anything about it as well. And now what we've got is kind of, in order to try and correct things, is we've got quite dramatic shifts. So the thing that's been a bugbear of mine last few weeks has been the kind of sports entertainment aspect, to which I've always been one of those people who's always felt, well, the problem with the sports entertainment stuff is if we want that, we'll go to WWE. That exists. That's what they do. It's what they specialize in. You were doing something different, and we've kind of gone to that straight away, which then makes me worry about, well, who are the people in the room? That brain trust. Where do they all come from? What are their influences? And it always comes back to WWE, and it's like, actually, that's kind of part of the issue. And I get the idea they're the market leader and they're like they're always going to be influential, but you're never going to be them, and you're certainly not going to beat them by being it, or make yourself kind of long term. And by that I mean 20, 25 plus years, not just like when we're in year 5. And it's like, they're the things I always feel about it from like a creative perspective, and about thinking about how do we present it, how do we make Rampage different from Collision in like a meaningful way, and we've not got to those points yet.
And I think this is where you just get that sort of like butting heads standpoint a little bit, is the fact that, like, I don't think it's something as hardcore wrestling fans who love wrestling matches like to hear and think about as people that we are, but the vast majority of people who watch wrestling and have watched wrestling on TV for the last 25 years aren't obsessed with the quality of matches, are they? They're interested in being entertained, and like, and if you take probably that core of people who back in the day used to hijack WWE audiences, if you think about like people who are like your hardcore AEW fan from a match quality point of view, thinking about that, it's the minority, isn't it, kind of thing. And I think it's that element of trying to get that balance right between being sports entertainment and being wrestling, because I think if AEW was a wrestling quality, like match quality promotion purely centered around that, I don't even think the ratings would be what they've been at any point that they have, to be honest. I think there's always had that bit of sports entertainment bleed through, even when you go back to things like Being the Elite, and you think about like the first All In and things like that. It was fucking Joey Ryan's penis druids, and it was fucking, is Flip Gordon going to get booked and things like with, and there was sort of like classic sports entertainment-y elements to it, to what the books were doing. Okay, yeah, maybe it was a bit more contemporary, maybe it was a bit more left field, maybe it was something that was a bit more like edgy or a bit different or something like that, but there was still that strong aspect. Of course, obviously the books are going to go out there and have 4.5-star matches or Kenny and things like that as well, and that's where them here, they just need to make sure there is that balance between the sweet spots between the two, because It has to have stories. It has to have characters. It has to have over-the-top characters. But it's making sure
Does
that
it?
the
Is that
spirit.
what? Is that? I mean, is that what JP is saying though? Like, because I don't think when JP says sports entertainment, I don't think he's talking boots and trunks. I think you can have stories and you can have promos and you can have all of that window dressing without it being, I think, just to play devil's advocate, the sports entertainment that JP is talking about.
I mean, I don't know. I think I personally think it needs a bit of it. I do. I think it needs a bit of over the top. Like if you're looking at pulling in TV numbers and things like that, I think it does need a bit of sort of sports entertainment. Not completely kind of thing. Like if we turn around and suddenly we've got like 8 Tony Storms going on and things like that. But I know that's going to be like Marmite to some people, and like.
But that is how people feel that there's 8
you
of
know,
those in any given show. Sorry to interrupt again, but that is how people feel, I think.
But that's where then I think people are going like a bit over the top about like some of this stuff, and maybe just jumping and just being a bit like going a bit too far and letting like one element like cloud their judgment as if it's like something across the piece as a whole. Like you still look there, you look over the last month, like the amount of fucking really, really good, strong wrestling matches that have been on Dynamite of like loads of different encompassing so many different people, whether it's Danielson, Swerve, Jay White, Takeshita, Carl Fletcher, Orange Cassidy, Claudio, like Shida, like there's been loads, and FTR, there's been loads and loads of good, like really strong wrestling matches that have happened across Collision, Dynamite, and Rampage over the last few weeks, but I don't see anyone talking about them online. All I see people talking about is fucking Paul White's knees or fucking Tony Storm's overacting or, bad shit like Ric Flair and things like that. Obviously getting a negative reaction because of course it was, and that's just a dumb decision in that time period that almost to me just sits on the edge of like this thing has just been like, why the fuck have you done that kind of, when you're looking at things. But I actually think the balance between sports entertainment and wrestling has been good in this 6 weeks time period. And that's probably one of the reasons why it has pulled me back, because it's something that they've used to lead into some feuds that have then been some good matches, or that they've then set up matches for Full Gear that feel like they've actually maybe got a bit of juice behind them and there's actually a bit of interest there, as opposed to rocking up at Wembley and going, well, this match is irrelevant, this match is irrelevant, this match is irrelevant. It feels like when I look at the Full Gear card, I'm like, actually, there's been a bit of like focus been put on there in terms of like characterization of who people are and why are they even having this match. And okay, if that one's over the top or something like that, it might not be my cup of tea, but at least it feels like there's a bit of effort's gone into creating a reason why and giving somebody a reason to want to engage from that basis. I definitely don't think it's gone fucking ridiculously this way from a sports entertainment point.
It has. You're right, and I would say that the two big praises in terms of like the acknowledgements that the things they've done on is, one, the build to pay-per-views, but then they're not at a schedule where they've had 3 fucking pay-per-views in a month. Insane stuff like that. We've actually got a bit of a gap here, at least, to Full Gear, and thank God that is the case. And it's been like the fact that they're doing show-long storylines rather than this very bitty, fragmented stuff. The issues with those storylines, there are issues with them, but you kind of think, well, no, that's the path you kind of want to go down, because you need to keep people engaged and hooked to the very end of like, well, what is the climax of the show going to be? That's just standard narrative storytelling. And it's a thing that they had forgotten about. And building pay-per-views, like, what's the reason I should care about the blow-off matches? We have those. And I think when it's been at its best, I was like thinking, what's the stuff I've liked? And I was like, Swerve Hangman. Why did I like it? Because there was an element of reality to it. They were over-the-top characters. They were characters. But there was also a sense of like, well, what are they kind of fighting for? Do they have reasons for this? And it's like, well, one of them's in a bit of a lull. The other one sees an opportunity as like, Swerve Strickland of being on the come up and saying, well, this guy's been in this position. I want to overtake him. And that, I don't want to make like a Game of Thrones comparison, but it's the idea of, well, what are they all fighting for? What is the central goal they're all aiming for? Well, it should be like those big titles. And that's the problem when we get to the too many titles, is you throw too many thrones in. It's Game of 15 thrones. And you're like, well, I don't give a shit about any of the thrones then at that point, because all of them feel meaningless. But whereas these two characters were talking about, actually, we want to get to the pinnacle. How are we going to get? We're going to get there. And so it was like a serious feud that made complete sense. That then delivered with a match, and it was like brilliant. Like I remember being like just thinking, oh, thank God! Like that's the kind of it's not complex storytelling. It still has your characters. You're not spoiling it by having to, by making us wait for the match, but you've got confrontation, but at least between some people, even if they're over the top, they're kind of real. So it's like a rivalry. So it kind of felt like sports, which is the hot TV product of the moment. I was thinking about what is the hot program? And you go, well, it isn't really fiction stuff. It's sports. That's where it is. And yet, for all fans, we love fucking narratives, whether it's transfer drama, whether it's like kind of beef between players and the rest of it. And there's a bit of over the topness to it, but we like that. It kind of creates a soap opera. Think about the Premier League and the rest of it with managers' sackings and the rest of it. There is this soap opera narrative bit into it. And I think wrestling could learn something from that. It's just like you can keep it real, but you can have your cake and eat it, basically.
This is what I was going to say, because I do fundamentally disagree that this is what AEW was built on. It's what Being the Elite was built on. But I think Tony Khan came in and got rid of most of that. I think Tony Khan's mantra was wins and losses and sports-based stuff. And it never really came to full fruition. But I think we did have that clashing of kind of two styles at the start of AEW. And it did feel like, while we still gave a little bit, the Joey Ryans disappeared. And that stuff, Blue Pants got, hammered by podcasts like us for good reason. And Tony Khan basically got bullied into stop and letting that shit, No Legs and Tommy Dreamer turning up on his pre-shows.
Brandy Rhodes' faction.
And that went away. And that's the thing. Like, I don't even like that we're having a discussion about like because sports entertainment to me is not a thing that really exists. It's something Chris Jericho uses for a stable, or Vince Russo uses for a stable in TNA. But if we're going to talk about what we mean by it, then I think it's, like JP said, then I think that's kind of been one of my big takes on because I think the Hangman and Swerve feud is a great example of where I've kind of made the case that AEW are taking 2 steps forward and taking 1 step back, or 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. And in some situations, I fully, agree with that. I thought the Swerve and Hangman story was one of the best things AEW had done in months, if not years, when it was, born on reality and serious, and we could all relate to the fact that, Swerve wanted to get to the top of AEW, and Hangman had been gifted it all, and then Swerve beat Hangman. It was like, oh, what a great way to start the story. Now Hangman's going to now get his revenge. What I mean when I say sports entertainment is, well, instead of staying down that through line of relatable, believable characters, they've got Swerve acting like a villain in a bad B movie, shouting at somebody's baby in a house. That's sports entertainment to me. It's like, again, for the positives, I think you're going to list, Gareth, and we should, definitely get into them. I've said about Jay White in this MJF feud. For its negatives, and to be honest, I think there are plenty. I think MJF plays it too light. I think he's a big reason why there's too much light-hearted stuff on AEW. Maybe the phrase should be light-hearted rather than sports entertainment. But like, he's a big shining beacon, I think, of a lot of the problems with AEW. But it doesn't mean we can't give credit when it's due. I think this program is going to make Jay White as a top guy. But there are a multitude of problems with how they're getting there in the week to week and the story that they're telling with it. And I think it's something JP's been saying a lot with AEW. It's the tone that is often the issue here. And I think you are right, Gareth, to point out that a lot of the fact that we know the pay-per-view cards, like we're going to go through the pay-per-view card in a bit, that's a positive that should get more press than it does. But it's getting drowned out by, I think, these negatives that maybe people are feeling a bit more than you in the, like I say, the multitude of more light-hearted people on the show. And we can go up and down, the list of acts in the company, a couple of which I do like, but overwhelmingly, there is too much of it. There is too much light-hearted stuff. And that's, again, what I would mean by sports entertainment. I'm fine with Hangman and Swerve cutting promos on each other and being larger-than-life characters and, having, they both got star power and having, a reason to believe in them both, and, not just having matches for the sake of matches on TV. I want reason behind my matches. I want, the level of storytelling that they were doing with that feud. I think that's the best example of that, where you take month 1 of this period we're talking about, and there's all those positives, and you take month 2 in this section of the feud, and the entire tone of that feud has changed, and it's got all of those elements that I think is seeped into the TV as a whole.
It's interesting that, because like I don't. I think probably when it was in the build up to that first thing, that was when I was like staring blankly, just getting a bit. I was just a bit finding things a bit boring. Maybe I'm more sports entertainment than I think I am, kind of in terms of what I like. But I know that the swerve thing, like in the house, that was obviously as hokey as shit, and we can all pull our ridiculous holes in it of, you know, like from an execution standpoint of who's in the house and things like that. But I'll tell you what, when Hangman came out and confronted him at the top of the ramp on whatever show that was the other day, I cared about those two as wrestlers going at each other more than I have at any point during this feud. Any point when fucking Hangman, he dead-eyed him off the stage, didn't he? Like through the table, like to the floor. Like I was like, fucking yes. And Hangman looked like as cool as fuck, kind of thing, when he came out with like, and he looked like the aggression in him and things like that. I was like, looking at it, I was like, this is what Hangman should be like, kind of. He didn't come across as anxious millennial cowboy there. He came across as this fucking hard bastard ass kicker who's going to take no shit and fucking dead-eye you off the stage through a table or onto the floor or whatever. And like now, when I'm thinking about their match coming up, like I can't wait to that. I feel like that's got more juice for me personally than it's had at any point. And I also think that because Swerve has been such a horrible cunt since getting that win, kind of up to that point. Like, to me, I feel like as I've been watching it and like consuming it, it feels like it's kind of elevated him as an arsehole to me in my head. And I think of him as a bigger heel now and stuff. And like, okay, yeah, there's the hokey in the house stuff, but it's, you know, it's wrestling kind of thing. That stuff for me. But I think it's worked. I think you know my feelings on Swerve. I've always thought like, yeah, he's a mid card guy. He's a good, solid mid card guy kind of thing. But like now, I'm like looking at that. I'm thinking, for me, it's given him a chance to like sort of display his chops a little bit, like a bit of the fucking arrogance, a bit of the facials and stuff like that. That's come out of it a bit more by having almost that sports entertainment side turned
He
up.
was doing that anyway, though, was he not? Like, because I'm surprised with you saying that, like, because as the detail man, like, he won the match at the pay-per-view. So, like, how did we get from the point where he's won and now why did he go in Hangman's house? Why did he do that? Why was Hangman not asked about it for 2 weeks after it? And I agree with you. It's a bit like the reverse argument of that segment. You know, we can say the individual segment was hokey, but what about the rest of it? I kind of say that with this segment on Dynamite and Collision over the last week. This segment was great, and Hangman looked like a killer, but I don't think it was earned with the character, and I think the surrounding it takes. I suppose that we're just gonna have to agree to disagree. Takes me out of it more because where was Hangman the last couple of weeks? Why only now does he care?
Two, why is wasn't allowed it.
Why? Why is the company banning Hangman Page from the match?
Because of what he's going to do to him.
But why is he listening to them and not waiting until the bell rings to come out? And why is the company not taking that? You know, there was like a funny, I don't think it was this, but there was like something fucking ridiculous, like somebody got shot or something on Collision, whatever the angles they do these days. And the next segment was Tony Khan with a microphone going, what about to announce the tournament? Not giving a fuck that happened in his wrestling company. Do you not think those holes are there that like I know it's wrestling, but like surely like there's a home invasion and no one seems to give a fuck. It's same thing, you know, with the minor criticism. Jay White and MJF. Jay White's still got the belt. Like it's been like 3 months. I'm the positive is I'm in for long builds, but like is there no consequence in this company to these acts? I can't buy into it. That's the thing. I can enjoy the individual performance of Hangman Page this week. I can enjoy absolutely Swerve. You know, he can give him the worst material in the world, and he's gonna, you know, do his best to knock it out of the park. But it's all the things surrounding it. It just doesn't fit to me with what was. I mean, we're getting bogged down in this one story, but it doesn't fit for me.
I mean, I'm not as asked about the him beating him and then just like coming back for more. I just like, oh, what an arsehole, he's beat you, and he's gonna fucking like still come after you, kind of thing, and like.
And he's going to eat your child.
Try and make you look like as big, like bigger cunt. Maybe it's just that I've just bought. Maybe it's just that sometimes you need to hit rock bottom to like build back up. Maybe the fact that I did hit rock bottom and turned it off, that I'd stopped caring about the details so much that I've been able to where they have started to put some elements of structure back into what they're doing. Maybe I've I've been able to do that. Maybe you need to hit rock bottom, Benno, before you can.
Took reverse positions here.
I like See, you make it sound like Edward Norton driving off a road in Fight Club, isn't it? Like, at this point, just letting go of the steering wheel.
like that's obviously like one feud in a whole. But I almost feel like taking a step back from it and trying, like, as I was trying to think of it, like thinking about talking about stuff today and thinking about, well, what has changed? And I was trying to like try and put the pieces together of why things do feel different. And I feel like where we were talking about before about like excess being the problem and too many wrestlers and too much TV and things like that, I almost feel like they've adopted this less is more approach kind of thing as well. And like you strip things back and you go like, Jay White and Bullet Club Gold have had a massive presence every single week, sometimes across multiple shows, like maybe, one show. Like MJF's obviously been central in a lot of different ways to what's been going on. Swerve has been given.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you like the MJF stuff, like as a whole? Are you enjoying that?
Do you know what? I was thinking of it, and I was thinking of like to give them credit, they obviously had an idea of where they were at with Wembley, with Adam Cole and stuff like that, and obviously his injuries taken them out of the equation. And to be honest, the way they pivoted it, like I can't argue. Like personally, like where I think the direction they've gone with Jay White. You talk about like the belt being like a thing. Why isn't he got his? And okay, you're getting into we need a Jack Tunney to take the belt back or something like that, and a bit of authority. But MJF's tried to get it back and things like that and not been able to and stuff. But the key part of it for me has not been MJF. The key part of this feud for me has been Jay White. And I think Jay White has been absolutely fantastic over the last 6 weeks. I feel like he's been positioned like I feel like Jay White feels like a bigger, more credible main event star even than he was at any point in New Japan. Like for me, like I feel now like he genuinely looks like, and he's got a belt on his shoulders, but he genuinely feels like he could be the champion of the company and the top heel who this whole thing could be built around. And I think everything that they've done with the Guns and that they've done with Juice Robinson around it, Juice Robinson and the fucking Guns, and I'm enjoying them. I can't, like, that music hits and I'm like looking forward to seeing them come out on the TV. They feel like a really good act collectively, that feel like they're really like intertwined, and they've just really sort of like cemented themselves as this credible stable. But Jay White has knocked it out of the park in this run up to this match. I think he's been absolutely brilliant, and I think some of the MJF stuff has allowed him to do that. And I feel like it's almost like they've just given the reins a little bit the other way to sort of like build that opponent. But then the other stuff that they've dressed up around it, like I haven't minded them using like just to eke Wardlow back in kind of thing. And it's been like, okay, we're going to have a stab at kind of, re-energizing him. Obviously there's a Samoa Joe stuff going on. There's Acclaimed stuff going on around it as well. There's a lot of sort of like moving parts that are sort of around MJF, but it's given it, because that Jay White MJF thing has felt so central. It's given all those moving parts something that means that it can be on Dynamite and Collision and Rampage, and they've been interlocked in different ways as they've come together. It's creating something that down the line, obviously there is something with Joe, there is something potentially there with Wardlow and things like that. I think I've probably given quite a bit of credit really for how they've pivoted out of what their plans clearly were for Adam Cole, and I think it's ended up in quite a lot of like pluses really across the board. I'd even go so far as Roderick Strong and Taven and Bennett and things like that. Like it's been a boost to them as well. So like you look at that, you look at MJF and he's got like 13 people around him who have been booked in and around the world champion that they've probably all got a plus next to them compared to where they were 2 months ago, 3 weeks ago. 2 months ago, 3 months ago. And like that's a positive. That's a massive positive, like surely. And like it's been such a key part of the programming, and throw the devil into the mix beyond it and the suspense of that story as well. Like I think they've really worked it hard to fill a lot of hours but make it cohesive and sort of aligned.
They've made it the focus, which is something which, if we talk about Adam Page's title reign, and we did, was what they never did. It was like
Yep.
he was champion, but he wasn't the focal part of the show. You can't argue that anymore. And that was a criticism of ours. And that they have made it. I think my pushback would be like a kind of better way of telling that. And this becomes, I don't want to end up just going, well, book it this way and whatnot. Is just at times there is things about spacing it out. Like you can have him go through a challenge and kind of tell that story and allow us to focus on it, and then get to the next challenger, or just have it kind of a bit more subtly, rather than one of the episodes where it's like, right, we've set up 4 potential MJF matches here.
It's like they just remembered 3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
I like that.
But but the idea of getting Wardlow into the mix, it's a good idea. Getting Samoa Joe into the mix, because that was a really good. I thought their interaction, their promo battle they had together, and the match they had was like, actually, this is good shit. Like, so I'm kind of fine and down. And Jay White as well, which I think the key thing is in him and Swerve Strickland, they've struggled on the heel side, like for a while, and they've managed to find 2 heels who are different, but they're kind of the same in the sense that in the main, they're smart heels. They're not dumb idiots, and they can kind of back things up. And when it comes to promos, they're different from, like, Jay White is never trying to be a face. And that's like a really, like, you don't imagine the crowd kind of cheering him because he's got enough. And this is crazy. I used to think of when we used to hate Jay White in terms of him being pushed in huge, man. It's hard. But then I think one of the things we always said is like, he's a TV, he should be in the States. This is where he can do this stuff. And we're really seeing that kind of come to fruition. And I'm of the belief, like you, Benno, that when we get post this, he's going to be in that top line mix. Like, he should be then in feuds with a Danielson and a Moxley and the like, and in that kind of mix and across multiple shows. But it's also like, I think it's his delivery. So it's like taking the tofu insults and just going, nah, I'm going to work with that. And I thought that they were the kind of like really good instincts that I kind of got like rewarded by. And even with Swerve as well, like you had heels telling their truth, which is when that's kind of at its best, as opposed to the kind of like a lot of the kind of daftness that can happen at times.
I feel like for the guy in the middle, I'm pushing back more than JP. Sorry, Gareth, putting you on the spot again. Like, I mean, it listed all those people, and I agree with you that MJF is like, and the world title being the most important thing in the company, it has been a key ingredient missing in AEW and has been a key criticism of ours. So again, how many steps forward, how many steps back? I think that the steps forward in the conversation are that. But the names, like, just listing off there, the names who were involved in this, they're all clowns. MJF, Adam Cole, The Guns, Juice, The Acclaimed, Roderick Strong, Taven, Bennett. I'd maybe even count the Devil in that. Like, I don't think we can on the one hand say there isn't a lighter edge to AEW and not acknowledge that pretty much every single one of those guys, and there's more of them across the roster, Tony Storm, and there's names that I like as well in that grouping. I'm with you. I enjoy the Guns. That's a lot of light-hearted acts involved in your world title program. No, that's just one point. I've got another one, but no.
I don't know.
You understand why people feel that way about it? That it's very light-hearted for your world title program?
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. I think Jay White and MJ, there's goofs around there, like your goofy sidebar characters, kind of as it's they're always going to be in there. But Jay White and MJF, that feels like a serious main event match to me. That for Full Gear, that feels like MJF's MJF. He is he is what he is. It is kind of kind of thing. But I feel like that feels like it doesn't feel like stupid. It doesn't feel like kind of we know MJF can go out there be serious. Like when he came out and he cleaned house the other day with the ring on and stuff like that. Like he's still been put in situations where he's presented he's a credible guy. He can go even in some of the matches and things like that it's he's had recently. I still think they've sort of bled that into the mix of that's the kind of the guy that is, even it's a shite match, but he still wrestled Daniel Garcia and things like that in a serious way and things, it to me from that point of view. But I just even think the Joe stuff and the Wardlow stuff and things like that, I think they're serious. I know it's kind of like,
That's the counter, yeah.
yeah, and I think what I've enjoyed about the interweaving of those things, and it not just been a isolated linear program, is the fact that MJF's this guy, and he hasn't even got his own belt that he wants. Like, he wants his belt back, and he's been this guy who's always been the heel, and he's always kind of like had almost like doing the dirty work and things like that. And now he's been put in that total like spun around situation that he's the guy, he's the champion. He's suddenly like playing up to everything, and he's been nice, and he's been like, he's got the crowd on side and things. He's befriending people, even, he's with like the Acclaimed and things like that. He's almost trying to be this good guy kind of, but then at every turn he's got someone who's like trying to fuck him up at every point. And like, he's got Jay White and the Guns, and they've totally like got against him. I don't know, gets away from them, gets out of a match or something, turns around the corner, he's got Wardlow grabbing him by the fucking throat, like he's doing a promo on the next show. Samoa Joe's coming at him from the side and things like that. He feels like a marked man, and he feels like a man who suddenly has gone from the guy who was like, he was the one who always had that kind of numbers advantage and getting the better of people and sidetracking people and blindsiding them and things. Now the turn has gone totally the other way. And I find that really intriguing personally, because I was always a massive opponent of MJF being a babyface. I just wanted him to be a career heel. Didn't like it at all when he was leaning into the babyface stuff 12 months ago or whatever it was. Just, I thought that then when he then became, no, he is a heel, it lessened him as a heel character. And I quite like the fact that in this run, I still don't know what that motivation is with him and things like that. And is he a babyface long term? What is the plan with this kind? Like, and I like the fact that he's turned up the babyfaceness, and he's suffered a lot in quite a lot of ways by being the babyface, and that's where then, yeah, it's sport entertainment and it's fucking bullshit and stuff like that with the devil stuff that you've got layered on top of it. But there's that part of me that thinks, like, well, what's going on here? Is this going to be a big MJF swerve or something, or what? To me, the fact that MJF's been put in that position adds an extra layer of intrigue around this than it just been maybe some bullshit masked man who's going around fucking battering people or something like that. It feels like it's had a lot more thought put into it than maybe it's getting appreciated. Like, people are appreciating it for on a surface, like at a surface level. Unless I'm just been classic, reading too much into stuff kind of thing, trying to build the story in your own mind. Like,
he's putting a lot of thought into it, but I think I would argue it's too much thought. I think there's too many ideas in there. He needs an editor. Like, because in principle, I agree with a lot of what you said there. It goes back to the tonal conversation, because there's a lot of tonal shifts across those different scenarios. But the overwhelming one for me is like, all of that sounds good. He turns a corner and there is another rival. If it was dealt with more seriously than what it feels like, which is, it's basically a Laurel and Hardy sketch, like most of it. Like, and that's where it loses me, because in principle I agree, but it's the tone that is often the issue for me with this stuff. And I don't even think that's the big tone. But but to throw another criticism at it from another side as well, like, while that's true, it's not always true, because he's inconsistent with the tone with it. Like this week, I'm surprised you like the MJF and Daniel Garcia thing. This isn't a teardown of things Gareth likes. I'm just interested genuinely. But like, good, because it wasn't great. But why is MJF telling Daniel Garcia that, like, oh, you need to stop the dancing, mate, you need to be more serious? He was fucking being a goofball 2 seconds before that. Him and Adam Cole were fishing and caught the Big Show. Like, like, if that was consistently his character, fair enough, but it's not, is it? It's all over the show. And yeah, I think you can criticize it from both sides, but I don't know. Like, I would take that in a vacuum. I would take that Daniel Garcia match. I described it on the weekend show as like, it was like when Taka Michinoku faced Triple H, or when Shelton Benjamin faced Triple H, and it's that upcoming babyface, and he's getting the best out of him. Like, again, there's a nugget of something there. I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. There are good things and there are bad things about this, but I just think it's a lot more of a mixed bag for those reasons.
I think I have the same tonal issue with it, and I've always kind of felt, and again, this is the kind of like historical precedent of like what is on top in wrestling is ultimately it's kind of drama. Is there comedic elements on it? Fine, there is, but a lot of the time it does go, especially with the Adam, it goes into overt comedy, and not at one point when it was kind of at its best, and I was never, and I'm probably not the person really to speak necessarily about the Adam Cole feud necessarily, but it was about these kind of these people who didn't like each other, who grew to kind of like each other, who then had like a really big match. And so while it was comedy, it was like slight buddy comedy. There was like tinges of kind of truth to it as well, with one of the characters effectively not being able to kind of have friends. And I'm giving it probably more credit than I actually ever want to for those reasons. I think the problem has then been is that you've got him doing like when he was backstage looking for tag team partners and stuff like that. There was like what you've described is really a story that needs to be rooted in kind of like seriousness with perhaps good like funny lines kind of put into the mix instead of going for like kind of overt comedy, because then I always think it's like it just sort of dilutes the stakes and everything else of what exactly is going on of this person being a marked man. It's pretty hard to have empathy for them, which is what we're meant to have with MJF, if they're kind of laughing a lot of the time and fucking around. Like, I think that's where I come from, like on that. And that's where that's where you need the editor, you need the idea of someone going, actually, this is kind of like we need to make this kind of a bit more consistent. And that's the thing that's probably the bigger thing about the shows themselves, is they're really not very consistent. They're kind of wild rides at times watching Dynamites of stuff that's very good, particularly in ring, to stuff that I do kind of find myself scratching my head. So by the end of it, like there's times when I watch an episode of Dynamite, I've been knackered. Like particularly when it's been at its worst, it's like fucking hell, it's like a fever dream of what I've seen. And all of this stuff happened in it. And I'm like, Jesus, I can't get my head around it at all. So yeah, I think with the MJF stuff, it just needed someone, again, it's calm, sane heads in the room to go, actually, there is some good ideas here. How long are we going to drag this out for? We're going to drag it out for 4 months. Right then, let's plan it. And then again, that goes back to a criticism, which is there at the minute where stuff is being changed at the last minute, which, I'm just reminded by the worst excesses of Vince McMahon tearing up scripts the moment people are going out there. WCW at its worst, when no one knew what they were doing, just people going out there and everything else. I think there was an episode of Raw that I'd watched, it was like the first one in age, where Seth Rollins just came out, went to the ground and went fucking back to the back again. I was like, well, what was the point of that? And I think there's times where like at least they're giving stuff meaning in these last few weeks because they're building to the kind of pay-per-views. They're not going fully down that path, but I think there's just, you do need to take some stuff kind of seriously, and it's how you deliver those kind of comedic aspects. That's where that stuff with MJF is where they need to rein so much of it in.
I mean, I wonder with MJF if it's the fact that he was such a heel that he almost feels like he needs to lean into that comedy to be a babyface in some ways, kind
He's
of.
doing Eddie Guerrero, isn't he? He's doing his own version of
that.
Eddie Guerrero. That's how I categorize his babyface role.
That's a good shout. That's a good shout. I think there's almost that, maybe, like I say, I've been enjoying it, but yeah, I mean, as you discuss it, you think, yeah, maybe he is leaning a bit too far that way, and overcompensating maybe, but because of the fact that he needs to present himself as a baby face, that's like valid. I think that's a good shout, like the Eddie Guerrero one there. But I mean, for me, it hasn't detracted from it. I still like. I'm really looking forward to MJF Jay White. I can't wait for that. Like, I think it's definitely worked for me, and I almost feel like JP talking about that almost been like a fever dream or whatever. That's what it was. That's what probably the way. I think that's why a big part of why I have been more on board with it in the last month or 6 weeks is because it hasn't felt like that for me, whereas it felt like that for a long period of time, where I'd just get to the show and I'd just be like, asking me what was the second match on that show, I'd have no fucking idea, or ask me about a promo and I just wouldn't be able to remember it or something like that, because it was just this big mishmash of, oh, this guy's on this week, and oh, he comes so and so, and you haven't seen him for 3 weeks, and now he's back and he's having a match. Why? Because, and things. It felt like that was the structure of the show previously. Whereas, like, I feel like now when I watch across the 3 shows in like almost in a given week, well, and again, I'm not saying this is all brilliant by any means, kind of thing, but from a structural standpoint, I know that there's going to be like a Don Callis something. I know that there's going to be the MJF stuff and like Jay White. I know that there's going to be Christian Cage and Sting and Darby. I know that there's going to be Swerve and Adam Page. I know that there's going to be something with like Tony Storm and Hikaru Shida. I know that there's going to be something with Julia Hart and Statlander and Willow Nightingale and things like that. Now you've got things bleeding you in with like your FTR and House of Black, and there's the things that's coming back there with Moxley and Orange Cassidy, and then there's other smaller, I'd say, like tertiary stuff. There's even sort of like tertiary little storylines going on around the edge, but I know every week that all of those, they're the 7 or 8 core focuses of the business, the core storylines. They're going to be prominent across all 3 shows. And I feel like it's simplified things for me now, that like I'm almost like, what's the next step in that storyline? This. What's the next step in that storyline? This. And that, I think that it feels more logical to me than it has felt for a very long time. It feels very clear and very defined what they're going for. And okay, in some instances, there's a lot of moving parts with, say the MJF and the various characters involved in that particular feud. But it's all like there's set lanes of things that's going on. There doesn't feel like there's much kind of, he's Christopher Daniels against Kenny Omega today because kind of like it doesn't seem to be as much of that as there ever has been before.
Yeah, and it's like, I think I do broad strokes agree with you. Like I say, the planning for the pay-per-view and just broadly, not letting Jay White get lost, not letting Swerve Strickland get lost. They've kind of let Takeshita get lost, but we'll talk about that when we get to the pay-per-view card. Well, that's 2 out of 3. I'll take it. It was a kind of almost a test we gave them at the end of the last pay-per-view, wasn't it, JP? But I do think I do broad strokes agree. Like it feels like there's a degree of that, but I can never shake the feeling that there's also a degree of panic and there's a degree of some things are overthought, some things are underthought. Like, I don't think a lot of, while the broad logic, maybe I'd give you, I just think like, even if you narrow it down to like, say the positives of the MJF feud, Samoa Joe and Wardlow, loads of positives about that. Wardlow, Joe wanting to come kill MJF. Yeah, that makes sense. Wardlow wanting to kill MJF is the best. I agree with you, the best use of Wardlow, but I don't think it makes sense. There's promos but he's talking about how MJF took everything from him. No, he didn't. You beat him. That's not true. Like, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
If you watch the product, that's not what happened. You won. Like, I guess there's a meta aspect to it. Maybe I'll forgive it because, Wardlow, for the first time in 6 months, looks like he's, can actually be arsed and is, turning up to work. So there's that positive to it. But then the Joe stuff, it's like on face, getting rid of the belt thing, like on face value, that's one of those where like the real life part of it I get, because it has been stupid that he lost to Punk at Wembley and he had the TV belt and no one gave a fuck. That he lost to MJF and he had the TV belt and no one gave a fuck. I don't fully understand why all of a sudden that's a problem for Joe. I also don't understand why it's a problem when the other storyline he's going for is, one, he's not guaranteed a title shot with MJF yet. How's he going to get that? By agreeing to win the ROH tag belts with MJF. So there's 2 more belts. So if his problem was carrying belts around, like you know what I mean? Like, has anyone thought that through? I'm not sure. So it's like, it's weird. Like, there's this dichotomy of things that feel like they are being plotted out, maybe things that are being overthought, and then things that I just don't stand up to, more than a few seconds worth of thought of scrutiny. Maybe it's nitpicking, and these are tiny things within the big overall picture. I think, Gareth, that you'd back, but these little things I think are part of my problem. I think with the company at the minute. I don't know if you got an answer to that, or I've got a couple of other like internet pet peeves I want to put here. I want to know your take on them.
Go on then. I'll try. I might, while I'm here, I might as well try and be contrarian and give it a review.
Well, no, you agree. That's fine.
To be fair, the Joe one, I like. I could agree with the logic behind him not carrying that world title, but I can't enjoy. Sorry, the TV title. I always think of him as being the ROH World Title. That's
the one belt he should go for at fucking Ring of Honor, by the way.
Part of the problem. But that tag belt thing, then, if it's like, if the idea is I'm relinquishing this TV title because, as he said in his promo the other day, like, you've got to be hungry kind of thing to win a belt sort of thing. I understand that in a sporting logic that, like, yeah, I'm not carrying a belt now. It's going to make me more hungry to get MJF's belt. But like you say, if he's going to walk away with the tag champ with him, I guess that's we'll see. We'll see with that, won't we? Can't, like,
I'll save it for the
I don't want to say
preview.
I don't want to say let it play out kind of thing on that one. But if has he been confirmed? He hasn't, has he, as his tag partner for that?
I think
for
it's
that
common,
match,
but Wiki says it is, but we'll trust Wiki. But just that point, sorry, before you finish your point, is it also doesn't make sense. Sorry, just to pile on. Didn't MJF beat the Righteous on his own? Like, why is he all of a sudden desperate to beat the Guns of all people? He needs Samoa Joe, but he's going to die. Like, what? Like, don't do that then. Don't do one if you're going to do the other. You can do both, but they don't fit together, do they? Like, that's where I think the lack of thought is. Sorry.
No, but that's fine. Like, that's where that is a logic slip, totally kind of thing there, and that's what I say when I say, like, I'm not saying this. I'm not waving a fucking big AEW flag and saying everything's like Rosie in the garden. I think the thing for me is I can see that there's more structural effort there from a writing and storytelling and planning perspective than there's been for a couple of years now. Can they improve that further by focusing on the details more? Like, absolutely. But then I look at something like your point about Wardlow there to me, and I'm like, well, he's a heel now, isn't he, Wardlow? I'm presuming if MJF's a babyface, and then in which case, if he's there, like,
who knows?
It's your fault and things like that, and it's like, no, it's your fault. Then that's heel fodder for me. It's like, no, it's your fault. Like, but you're trying to put the blame on MJF, but you're like trying, go back the other way. But again, that's I guess
that's if he's a heel. It's Blackpool Combat Club, in it, mate. Who knows?
and this is the thing is yes, I'm giving them credit for this six week time period, but we've been in this place too many times with Tony Khan as a booker, where you'll get something like that situation with Wardlow now, where you have got that thing inside you of, well, let's see where this goes. Is it something that's from a heel standpoint where things? Then it might just get dropped and might not get mentioned for fucking 4 weeks or something. And this is going to be the true test for me: is if the things that I'm more positive about now, if I still feel like this in 2 months' time, kind of thing, because a lot of these things that they've put in place here with the focus and emphasis on little story elements or focusing on particular wrestlers and things like that, if that follows through and comes to fruition, then it is going to be better, surely, because it shows that they've gone like, right, we're starting at this point and we want to get to here. This is where we want to go with Wardlow. This is where we want to go with Samoa Joe. This is where we want to go with Adam Cole when he comes back in, and this is how this ties in. If they deliver on that, that'd be fucking great. Like some intertwined story across 4 characters or something like that. We'll be positive about it. Have I got the faith that they're going to be able to deliver on it? Well, no, I'm still on that side of the fence that I doubt, because I've been let down so many times by Tony Khan in the last 2 years and his booking. But this is where I feel like it's not. I feel like this isn't Tony Khan, or it's not totally Tony Khan, like, booking this. I feel like there's somebody else in the room who's
it's Jimmy Jacobs, 100%.
Looking at this different, and has actually tore up Tony's Excel spreadsheet and is now actually thinking about things in a different way, because this way of booking that we have right now is absolutely not what Khan's demonstrated at any point in probably since Rampage started, I would say.
Which is interesting, because the people who disagree with you would agree with that, but for different reasons, and go, this isn't, the Tony Khan or AEW that I want. This is, presumably Jimmy Jacobs adding a lot of elements people don't like. But
the Tony Khan AEW was shit for 2 years because he changed his mind 1 week to the next and just like fucking randomly have people having a match against each other, but them not being 2 big stars having a match against each other, and like just throwing shit against the wall 1 week before a pay-per-view because, oh fuck, we need to get a tag match, or like, oh, let's have a tournament and they're in it, or let's have, let's randomly have a battle royal, or this person's jumped him in from the side in an interview, so now he's having a title match against him next week. Once that ranking system went out of the window and things like that, once
a massive problem.
Once he started to the thing that obviously we were hugely negative about was the bleed into the first Forbidden Door show and things like that, when his booking really went off the rails because he had to, like, I think there was, I remember us doing one show and we counted the belts, and I think we counted that like 14 or 15 belts had been defended on AEW TV in the previous 3 weeks or something like that, you know.
And we're not just allergic to shiny belts, it's the consequences of having that many belts, right? Like, right? That's what we're saying. Like, yeah. And that's being born. Like,
because you can't book in that way. It's impossible. It's impossible to book that with any level of meaning. So again, so I see this as a positive that there's a different head in the room. Okay, might be more sports entertainment or something like that, but I'll tell you what, I'll go for a few, like, you know, characters that are maybe over the top, don't quite land with me or something like that, if I feel like the bigger picture is a product that has got several strands of focus that look like they've been thought out over a, you know, a time period and look like they're going to deliver. And that's what I've had for 4 or 5 weeks.
So to a point you raised there about you know, things being thought of the week of, or announced the week of, or Tony Khan randomly decides to have matches. Got a new game I'm going to play here, which is the Internet versus Gareth. Just invented it on the fly. A couple of, like, I just want to put some hot takes to you that, like, I think people have generally had about the product. We're going to go through the pay-per-view card in a minute, but before we get there, trying to think which of the two should I start with. Okay, well, I'll come to the old men in a minute, because that's a big thing a lot of people want to talk about. MJF and Omega, what was your thoughts on that? Like, I think the general consensus, in fact, I don't even think there was a consensus. I think there was disagreement. I think on this podcast when me and JP talked about it, I think we were probably more negative than positive. I've seen positive takes out there on, you know, doing MJF Omega on Collision, and then the resultant rating that came as a result of it. What says Gareth? Gareth versus the internet?
What is everyone just everyone burying the idea of doing it?
Yeah, so I think I'll put I think the general strokes take would be, match was great. Rating didn't really maybe justify doing it on that particular night with that little notice, and the argument would be, and there's elements of this I disagree with, but the argument broadly would be, you know, this was a big match that could have been built up and done in a different way than just it's on Collision this week, so we're panicking because we've got competition on Saturday night. Counter, I think we were balanced about it at JP, and we're like, well, you know, we do talk about AEW, you know, being so averse to burning matches that you never get the big stars against each other, and maybe, you know, we're having our cake and eating it too, going, yeah, we want it, but not this way. But it is probably the biggest match AEW, you know, could have delivered, and they did that on a Collision with a few days' notice. Like, that was a massive hot button issue a few weeks ago. I think I know what your take is, but let's say you.
I mean,
more of that, less of that.
I didn't have a major problem with it as a standalone thing to go on that show, and like it didn't feel like the be all and end all. It didn't feel like this is burned forever and it can be never done again, with like a bit more substance behind it or something. I was thinking, okay, well, this is something that they can then maybe use further down the line, of the fact that they had this match and they had it in this way, and this was the outcome and things like that. You know, like, to me, it was when they announced it, I was a little bit like, yeah, isn't this what, like, we've been talking about for quite some time, is like, put your big stars in big matches on TV as well, kind of thing. And okay, like, we argue about having a bit of build behind it, but it's not like it's not like the golden era of wrestling never went right. Next week it's, you know, Steve Austin against The Rock on Raw this week or something like that. You know, I know
that was criticised too at the time, though.
Of course, but I don't think it's like, I don't think it's a stick to beat AEW with that. The fact that they go like, oh, he's got the longest title reign, I've got the belt. Like, do you want to have a world title match as a former world champion and one of the pillars of our company to try and, you know, get the belt, you know, prevent this and get the belt back or whatever? Of course, like, we've got like, why wouldn't why wouldn't you want that? And then when you're in this MJF situation of being a babyface and trying to present yourself as being a bit more like, he's trying to present himself as being a bit more giving kind of thing, and just been a bit more like babyface-ish, then that's kind of what a babyface does as well, doesn't it? Kind of, they take on the challenges as well. Like I'm not like, to be honest, I didn't care that much. It was just, it's MJF against Kenny Omega, and like, is it good? Like, yeah, that's a good big match kind of thing, and it was a good match, and okay, like the rating was like wasn't what they'd probably hoped for, and things like that week, but like, are people really going to remember that much in 6 months' time, or if they use it as something to heat up the feuds or something further down the line? Maybe. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like that big a deal to me.
Well, would that be why it is a big deal? Shouldn't we remember it? It's MJF versus Kenny Omega. You know what I mean? Like, that'd
if
be
you
the point.
present it as a massive deal, then you should remember it. If you present it as a match it's just a match that's happening on that show. Like, I remember it for the match. I'll remember it for the match itself, and like the match being good. But do I need to remember it for more than that? I don't know. Just playing devil's advocate for a bit. Why do I need to? Why do I need to? Why do I need to? I don't know. Remember if it was on Collision or if it was on Dynamite or what? I don't know.
But this is always the thing that, I mean, we want to see the build. That's the thing with wrestling, and that's the thing about having characters. Which
This isn't the
wrestling
story
has,
though.
Is that, but you want to see more of a build rather than what it felt like to us, and it was like one of the big criticisms was it was like they suddenly remembered that he was going to be the longest reigning champion and beat Kenny Omega's record, and this was the reason. But it wasn't something that we had. If there had been now we're into day 150 of MJF's reign, and we kind of knew where people ranked, and so you thought, okay, what is the long-term record that someone's going to beat? So, as the counterpoint, like for Roman Reigns, for example, when they started throwing out a crown jewel, it's this. This is how many days that Bruno held the title for. This is how many days that Hulk Hogan held the title for. You then get what you're kind of aiming towards, and I think the problem with this is it was like all of a sudden it's like somebody's going to beat somebody's goal scoring record, but you're only being reminded of it the week before, and it's never really been mentioned before. It's like, actually, this is something that should feel like it's kind of like a big deal, because I think while the match is good, and I suppose it was always going to end up being good just because of the kind of the freshness of it, what we never got with that match, I felt, was like a proper build where we would have them kind of properly cutting promos and whatnot against each other. And because we haven't gone back to it again, it just feels like it happened somewhat in like a vacuum. Like in some ways, and it's going to sound bad, I kind of forgot, like I'd not made any notes about that match happening. And, I was annoyed about it, but it's kind of like disappeared in many ways because there's so much other MJF stuff going on that the Kenny Omega thing is just like, it'd be hard to keep track of it because there's all these current kind of feuds and stuff going on. I think that would be some of the pushback for that.
I quite
Yeah, I
like
just
the
think it
little
should.
I quite like the little whispers, like of MJF still been a bit of a cunt, where he was like whispering in his ear like 16 days or something like that, like when he was just sneaking up next to Kenny in the promos, and at first I was like, what's that? And then 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 you thought about it and realized, but like I didn't think that was to me. I was like, that's if they were going to take each other on in the main event of Full Gear and it was for the world title, then I'd want that build and I'd want the promos and I'd want like that side of things told properly. But like that, I don't know, that just wasn't, to me, that wasn't the feud. It was just something that was on the side that was a good thing to have. And I don't know. I feel like it's sort
I
of
would
like
say too big to be on the side, though. For me, should be like that. That's not what that level of match is. I suppose is the disagreement there.
I think is like, to me though as well, like it sort of contributed a little bit to like Kenny's currently, like if you think about Kenny's overarching storyline probably is that he's in a bit of a funk, isn't he? Kind of thing. Like he's lost, hasn't he, at Forbidden Door to Will Ospreay? He's lost at All In. He's lost MJF to Cash to beat him and stuff. So,
Who?
he's on this and he's on such a downward turn that he's found himself tagging with Chris Jericho. Like that's how bad his life is at the minute. That he's losing all his matches and he's now fucking tagging with Chris Jericho, and he seems like this almost a bit of a subservient second to Chris Jericho here, and he was sort of like the quiet man, and like, again, it's one of those where you don't want to get too kind of giving them more credit than they deserve, because but it's
Feel
sort
like,
of
yeah.
almost it feels right alongside that he's lost, because where's Kenny going right now? What is Kenny's trajectory and stuff he's
Good
on
question.
he's on this losing streak. He's losing these matches when he takes. So is this going to result in? Obviously you've got the bullshit going on with the Bucks and stuff like that at the minute. Is like stuff with Jericho. Is this going to result in Kenny Omega being, no, actually, I'm my own fucking man here. I need to just fucking sort my head out. I need to get serious, kind of thing, and stuff like that, and come out of this as like, right, that I'm proper now. I'm fit. I'm healthy. I'm fucking getting rid of the bullshit. I'm getting rid of the Bucks. I'm getting rid of Chris Jericho. I'm my own man, or something. I don't know. That's just the way I see it. As I look at Omega, like I see a lot of people moaning on Twitter and things about him tagging with Jericho and stuff like that as well. And like, to me, it's just like that's where he is right now, and that's kind of like a contributing part of this downward turn that Omega's been on. And I'm looking at it thinking, well, there is going to be an outcome from this. There is going to be a shift. There's going to be a change. It's not like he's going to be tagging with Chris Jericho forever or something. He's not going to be Kenny who's losing matches to all these people. There's going to be some. It's going to be some catalyst that's going to. It's going to have to, isn't it? Kind of like, what is it? Is that it? If we just saw the end of Kenny Omega and he's now just going to be a guy who's in mid-card tag teams and losing to people.
We've had wasted years, haven't we?
You spent like 2 years in mid-card tag teams is probably the point I'd make. They absolutely could do that. Yeah, they've done it with like that was the thing about the stuff with the trio stuff. Like again, it's like the belts. We don't just hate shiny things. Maybe JP just hates trios matches, but I by design don't just hate trios matches. But it was always like, oh, Kenny's on the back burner, and then we're gonna heat him up. We're just doing this. Just you can't have everyone in the world title scene at all times. You've got to put people to the side. But that day never came. And I suppose they've lost. That's the difference. They've lost the benefit. That would be that day is going to come. That this is some kind of long-term, thought-through storytelling that is going to pay off on something. Because, for all intents and purposes, so Omega and Jericho versus the Bucks match is just something they come up with because the Bucks and FTR can't be in the same ring together. So I don't know if it's been thought that far through, and it gives Chris Jericho something to do, which is number 2 in the list of priorities this company apparently has when it comes to booking things. So yeah, I just don't give them that benefit that was the thing with me.
But again, that and this is it. It's going to be like, well, like see if anything. I just can't envision that there isn't a second top Kenny Omega main event run to come. Like I just do. I can't see how that wouldn't be the case. I can't see how we could like. For somebody who's like worked in Japan, obviously for that length of time and things, I can't see him dropping these singles matches and losing to people, and it not been something that's gonna pay off in the future, and it's not gonna be meaningful or referenced in some way. I just can't see it as Kenny Omega just been like, oh, I'll lie down for him, and I'll lie down for him, and I'll lie down for him, and fuck it, kind of thing. Like he isn't a funk. He's not elite Kenny Omega. He's not top Kenny Omega, like since he came back from his injury, even, and working in them 6-mans and stuff like that. They were presenting that story, weren't they? They've been a bit slower and a bit like not quite back and things like that. And maybe they didn't sort of like, of course, they didn't tell that sort of through to conclusion kind of thing. But I don't know. We probably talked about this far too much anyway. I think it's. I don't know if that's serious.
I'm a prick, and I don't think Kenny Omega ever had that run, even when he was world champion. But one day we'll get it in AEW.
Well, we said that, didn't we? Though we said we tore that to bits. He never felt like the top. He was doing all these bullshit, wasn't he? Visiting fucking primary schools or whatever, and doing little comedy skits and things like that in the background. Like I still think there's got to be a serious main event run to come from him. Things like this would hopefully help spawn it that way, but.
before we get to the card itself, just what that one last I think talking point on AEW, because there's lots of points of disagreement there. I think there's agreement in that there's path corrections seeming to happen. Maybe we agree to disagree on like the consistency and the coherency of some of those path corrections. But last big point, I think a lot of those been a big negative for people in AEW. And again, it's one of those things of, is this the actual problem, or is it just, you know, the thing that people say? Too many old men, too many old wrestlers. You know, you alluded to it before, Gareth. You know, you weren't asked by Big Show coming out. Obviously, you know, there's the rightful criticism of Ric Flair. Do you see the argument? There's accumulation of too much of that. Because I think there was that point that Dynamite a couple of weeks ago where it might have just been that particular Dynamite, but it did feel heavy because there was that. I feel like Billy Gunn was in the main event. I feel like, you know, Cope turned up at some point in the show, and there was even the ones we like, you know, like Sting, Christian, Matt Hardy was probably in the mix somewhere. Like, that is a big complaint a lot of people are making, that there's been a bit of a shift to just stepping over the line too much of that. We've gone from a couple of older acts and the special, i.e. Sting, to the point where, okay, like with what the point a lot of people make, the comedy characters, it's become a bit too much of the show, and maybe Big Show being announced, maybe Ric Flair turning up on the show. One of those seemed to be the straw that broke people's gap back with people, and that's where you got that phrase that you alluded to on the ECW show. This is not my AEW. I think that's a lot where that comes from, where people are just like, you know, I didn't sign up for TNA. I signed up for, you know, the young wrestling company with the young wrestlers. What say you on that one?
Yeah, I mean, you can see that argument, like, you know, like, you know, the Ric Flair stuff, just like everything that has been said on that kind of thing, and I'm in total agreement. It's just fucking preposterous. Like, why is it even a thing? It's just like, as well as just been, there's just no place for him on TV at all. Like, just the whole negative baggage that he brings and things like that. When you're trying to present your company in a certain way, you're saying stuff about Vince McMahon on Twitter and stuff like that, and then you turn around a week later and you bring Ric Flair in, and then, like, yeah, okay, like if it was whatever, come and give Sting a fucking hug on his farewell match or something like that, fair dues. Don't sign him to a bloody 3-year contract or things like that. The Paul White stuff, again, if it's something that runs for a 3-week period that gets him involved in this tag team match and then he fucks off again and I never see him on my telly again, great, like kind of thing. But I think I would strip it back like completely and I'd go, well, my main event feud has been built around MJF and Jay White and the, you know, of the characters who were involved in that, like, you know, Guns, Juice Robinson, you know, the Acclaimed kind of been mixed in it. Okay, yeah, Billy Gunn's in there in the mix, Samoa Joe's there in the mix, but it was around about 13 people there are involved in that feud. 2 of them are old. Your other feuds like that are going on there with like Hangman and Swerve, like, you know, absolutely fine. You look at the, you know, the other end of the spectrum, you know, there's young people still getting opportunities and like working and been involved as part of these programs, be it Darby and Luchasaurus and Nick Wayne and Hobbs and etc. in all these different areas. Okay, some of them not been featured like massively, but I still think the bulk, the vast majority of people who are used across the AEW product over the 6-week period doesn't fall into that old man category. And I just think if that feels a little bit like another stick to beat AEW with a bit to me. If Paul White's coming out and he's working in half an hour and he's working a main event or something like that, then I'm going to flip. If he comes and fucking stands on top of a stage and like growls at somebody or fucking joke slams them and then fucks off a minute later, that's a minute of TV that I can take quite comfortably, sort of thing, you know. If
there's a version of the Paul White thing that I could live with. It was on this week's Collision when Paul White stepped up from the announce desk and they had to separate him and Hobbs. I was like, you know what? If that was the angle, if it was just that, I'd be like, oh, okay, that'd be cool. And the next week on TV, Hobbs beats him and we all move on. Like, you could see it. It's probably the, you know, the putting him in the match bit that I don't like. But yeah, I can you know, I can see that, even if, you know, we were bored of him in 2006, as we talked about on the ECW show on patreon.com/grapple. I don't know if plug tonight, JP. Just throw one in there quickly.
Yeah. Do I want him to be on my telly? No, kind of thing. But again, we're going to talk through the Full Gear card like later on in the show, and like you think you've got, you know, on the main card you've got what, Chris Jericho, you've got Sting, and is that it? old people, Christian Cage of like old people. Like everyone's so high on fucking WWE right now. We've got John Cena, we've got Rey Mysterio. You know, like they're working pay-per-views for like WWE. I don't see it as a big like centrally contributing problem to AEW. Damian Priest's probably older than half of them lads.
That's it. But yeah, unless you got to know that, JP, shall we?
No.
I suppose we're going to get into the pay-per-view itself. We can rip apart some of those matches and some of those people. But before we get there, I have reminded myself, JP. For all you people who follow the timestamps out there, I've tried to fool you this week. Any plugs, JP, before we get there? It's time to pay the bills, as better podcasts than us would say. Where can people get more if they've enjoyed this conversation so far? But that's part one. We're going to get into the pay-per-view in a second. Where can they get more of that, JP? Where's stuff been going on this week?
Well, simply put, the place to go to is patreon.com/grapple, where we recorded. It was the latest patrons poll, and we had month one of WWECW, going back to ECW on Sci-Fi or whatever the myriad of names that we could end up giving it. But effectively, WWE's reboot. So we watched the first 4 episodes of that. We went through each of those. We talked about, don't get me wrong, we go into the bullshit. That's what everyone would be expecting. But then we also have the kind of bigger conversations about like kind of whether actually, given the kind of time and place, was it a good thing to try and do?
Like communism, as you say in the
like communism.
Yeah,
that's what you said. It's exactly like communism, ECW, which isn't a statement I thought that we would end up saying. But it's a cracking show. So if you haven't heard it, have a listen to that. And the only place you can go to for that is patreon.com/grapple, where, and dare I say it, we've got the perfect person here to describe. We're going to be having a sort of special preview, aren't we, of when of a show that's going to be released early for the Patreons if you're across there.
I think you're about to build the ROH thing there. My DVD ready. Okay, well, I'll give Brett out, whatever. I'll sit back.
Well, we can go into that. Sorry, go for it, Gareth.
Well, yeah, we've got a new show coming up on the Patreon. Myself and Matty, we're going to be bringing Retro, so giving Benno and JP a bit of a break from.
What's it about, though, mate? That's the big question. I can't tell.
Yeah, it's just this guy called Brett. He's quite good, really. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be just talking about his career in a bit more detail. But what we're trying to do is just sort of like spread it out, really, and just maybe aim to try and do one every month or every 6 weeks or something like that. And like the premise of the show is that like when people think about Brett's matches, and there's obviously like big matches that people immediately spring to mind and people talk about all the time as well. But there's so many other matches out there that are like sort of hidden gems, or matches that maybe are like lesser seen or less spoke about with Brett as well. So the idea is that nice tight hour, just a quite short show, like over that time period where we're just going to spend one match talking about like a big, more sort of like well-known Brett match, sort of like a big title win or something like that, but accompany that with one of the hidden gems as well. So we'll be digging deep into Saturday night's main event, or we'll be digging deep into dark matches that have become available and things like that you can access on YouTube and things, or digging out some matches from Stampede or what have you as well, really. So just trying to just talk about Brett and just sort of break down his matches. Of course, Matt is going to be putting the backstory in behind what happened in the match at the time as well. So hopefully that's another good reason to support the Patreon and listen to Grapple.
There you go. Patrons will of course get that one first before the greater public. So yeah, best place to be for it. Patreon.com/grapple. That'll be out this weekend. And yeah, last one also recorded this weekend. Throw in just a little matter of some retro ROH. Wasn't even my idea this time. King of the Mountain Tower Mulvaney revealed to us on the pre-show tonight, but that's his choice. If you want to join the Patreon as King of the Mountain, you get to set the agenda. Let us know what we're going to be reviewing in a given month. And yeah, he's gone with the ROH Milestone series right in the middle of the year, or at the beginning stages of the ROH CZW war, but more to the point, right in the midst of me doing a tour across America, going to as many ROH shows as I can. So stay tuned for that one. Lots of talk. I'm sure we'll talk lots of Danielson, lots of Necro Butcher, lots of ROH versus CEW, and mostly just my road stories. So excited to do that one.
Oh, buzzing about that. And we heard about that on the pre-show as well. where guess where you can go and listen to that, folks? Yeah, patreon.com/grapple.
Oh, we definitely overdone it now.
Mate, we have. Well, fuck them. They've had 2 hours of content so far. They're fine. Like, I think we've got to do plugs at some point. For the love of God, how long have we spent doing this? 5 minutes. You'll be if you've gone this far. Christ, we're not asking too much more. The other thing that was announced on there as well was we had like what was effectively our December King of the Month pick, which is actually, if you are able to, we're all going to North. And specifically, we're going to City of Newcastle, which eagle-eyed video viewers will have noticed I changed this backdrop because apparently I put up Gateshead before, which shows you how little I fucking know about the place, which is shocking. I just saw a big bridge and assumed it was much the same, but there we go. That'll serve me a lesson. But yes, we're going to the glorious City of Newcastle to watch North on December 9th, where there are still tickets available. So you want to come and join us. It's a cracking brewery. I know I'm looking forward to Gareth possibly having to be a bit eagle-eyed about which possible wrestlers might be in the crowd that night as well. That's going to be a little kind of like, he's used that word tertiary, a little bit of tertiary interest for their watching, not just the stuff that's going in the ring. Is something going to happen outside of it? But yeah, really looking forward to that as well. So if you haven't had a chance, you should always listen to the pre-shows as well, which this week, a very heated discussion on the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. Surprisingly, is what I jumped into, and I was like, "Oh shit, what's happened there?"
It's usually what we've had for dinner, isn't it? Matty got me going. Sorry, Gareth got the brunt of that. Sorry again.
Scran of the week was up on there as well. So yeah, have a listen to that as well on the pre-show. I won't say the name of the patron again.
YouTube.com/@grapple. There you go. Do that instead. Become
Someone
a member.
else.
You can get all the same content on there. But yeah, thank you for sticking with us, and we'll get into all of that. But yeah, in the meantime, let's get back to what we were discussing. And yeah, second part of our discussion is obviously Full Gear. Is this weekend? I was at it last year. I got my time hop came up today of pictures of me on the Brooklyn Bridge. Damn sight nicer bridge than the one behind you, JP. No offense to the good people in Newcastle, but you know it's a great memory for me. I'd had some good times over there with the post wrestler lads. Can't believe it was fucking year ago. Can't believe it was 2 years since I've been getting a lot of that this weekend. The anniversary of Eddie Kingston and CM Punk was on that one. Hangman Page and Kenny Omega was paid off at that Full Gear 2 years ago. What we had, lads, back in the day, unbelievable. But
time
still excited for this one here. Yeah, time. But what do we make of this card as an overall with what we've all just discussed there? I mean, broad strokes,
I hate it. It's been bookshite.
There's going to Gareth as a heel turn on the AEW defenders, or a face turn on some of the others. Yeah, it's. I don't know. I'm mixed on it. I don't think it's terrible. It doesn't light me world on fire. It's not exactly exciting. Is probably the word. I think it's functional, and I think for all the reasons Gareth said before, JP, I think there's, the fact that we know the full card is probably a positive. The fact that the pieces have been in place for a lot of these matches for a long while is definitely a positive. Yeah, it's absolutely not not rose tinted spectacles. There was some shite on that Full Gear 2 years ago as well. I think Cody Rhodes was in a tag team match with it was his last AEW appearance, unbelievably 2 years ago with Aleister Black, and there was some weird creative behind that. We had plenty of criticism for it, but I don't think this show necessarily hits the heights of a classic Full Gear like that. There is no equivalent to Hangman Page and Kenny Omega, or even Eddie Kingston and CM Punk. But some good stuff up and down the card, JP. You're excited for it? You're going to be watching it live. What's your take on this one as an overall?
I mean, in terms of watching live, I don't think I physically am capable of it. Like, I think I'll be saving myself for when we're in Newcastle, frankly, and it'll almost require several weeks of decent night's sleep to get to that stage, because it's generally an uninterrupted sleep I get at the minute. I think the way I feel about it is, in terms of positives, we have 9 matches announced for it. I don't know if we need many more, Tony, if we're getting into that. I think that's like one of the things. We don't need to go 14 matches deep into this. I think the thing about it is MJF Jay White, like as we've said, we've had kind of a lot of praise, if nothing else, for putting Jay White into this spot. Which, if you're at the point where they're running loads of pay-per-views, was it the 4th pay-per-view in 2 odd months, which again is nuts when you think about it. But again, that's where we are. Since All In, we've had, this will be the 4th pay-per-view. I think the thing about it is the Adam Page, Swerve Strickland, and Orange Cassidy, John Moxley matches. They're rematches, so it's not like there is the kind of freshness from the first time that we had of those. So we're into another area of the story, and I'd be more excited about Orange Cassidy, John Moxley, for example, if we hadn't had the Moxley injury and we had the direction where he was going to be a dominant, like international champion, and then Orange Cassidy comes back and beats him. That was the story, but which is also a thing that AEW have had where they've been snake bitten with injuries at really bad times. Like that's something that happens like quite regularly for them for this, and we've spoken about like our sort of criticisms of the card of Adam Page and Swerve Strickland, the direction that's taken. But I think at least the big thing you would say from it is there is enough there, and the area where I don't have faith in them with the TV at the minute and the build to stuff. I think that's probably all down the All In, if I'm going to be honest. That's where a lot of my kind of like unforgiving nature on this comes from. But there is reasons for these matches to exist, which is something. There is less of the throwing shit up against the wall and seeing what sticks. Even trios matches, which I'm not mad about, there's a reason for this trios match. We've been going a few weeks for this, and it's continuations of several storylines and the like. So I'm cautiously optimistic, and you're hoping with a couple of big reveals, like you'd want to do the devil reveal, really, at this point, and then you'd want to have. And wouldn't it be great if that was CM Punk? Just to throw that out there, that'd be fucking hilarious. Of all things, and it turns out that Gareth was right of the big meta work of the 2020s.
And blows all the structure out of the window.
But it does feel like at least that this has been given a degree of thought and a degree of. I've got more investment in this pay-per-view than I have had in other ones, and that's not to say it's the thing they've been hanging their hat on, isn't it? We deliver great pay-per-views, and for the most part, they generally do. So for this one, I don't have any reason to think this wouldn't kind of follow into it, even if it hasn't got the kind of big star-laden matches that you perhaps want on what is one of their traditional big four pay-per-views.
I'm surprised when you say that, to be honest. I thought you were more negative on this than that. I don't know. I think a lot of
I'm negative about the TV.
Yeah, right. But the build again. But the answer is, it's like any other AEW pay-per-view, isn't it? The show and the night is going to be good, regardless of anything.
Yeah,
that's a guarantee, isn't it? But like that does surprise me a little bit because I think I don't know. It feels a bit like when we talk about WWE and we're like, what was the word we were going to call the show last week? Adequate. The build's adequate, but is it more than that? I don't know. We should probably spec that as a minimum standard for a wrestling company. It's definitely an improvement. But yeah, I definitely thought, going in, you wouldn't be as up for it as that.
I'll tell you why, and I'm probably damning with faint praise. It's been a better build to this pay-per-view than there has been for the last three. And you might even say even Forbidden Door and put that into the mix as well and say then the last four. That's like something. And I suppose I'm taking that as like somewhat of a step in the direct. Like I'm not mad about like, the Hikaru Shida, Tony Storm build. But they've at least created, again, I feel like I'm just being a hypocrite and contradicting all of the criticisms that I have for it necessarily. It's like I expect it to be good. Am I massively excited? No. Am I just grateful? And this is it's damning with faint praise. I'm just grateful that I know what's going to be on the fucking show and that there's less kind of shit slinging than what we've seen in the last couple of months. Because that was like when we hit All In and All Out, it was like that was just fucking the height of ridiculousness of just creating stuff on a whim, and you just went, yeah, this is madness. Like, just felt like we were like in the eye of a fucking storm at that stage. And now at least it's like, okay, I'm at least grateful for the mercy of going, okay, I know what I'm getting myself into with this show. And I think I probably have the expectancy that there's got to be, particularly in the MJF situation, like, is there going to be the storyline twist, which then would change aspects about like how the TV then goes in the next month in the build up to World's End. Like, I think there's things about this where at least I'm kind of convinced it's going to be more of a substantial show than perhaps like what Wrestle Dream was, or certainly like All Out was.
I think for me, I would lean more on the negative side. It's like if this was a mathematical equation, or like for science, has there been build? The answer is yes. Is it been build that I'm into? Is it build that I'm invested in? Well, for the the reasons I mentioned before, and some of the gaps in logic in some of these feuds and the tone of some of these feuds, I would say no. I would say I'm low on pretty much, I'd say 80% of the matches going into this, as far as investment in the stories that they're currently telling. Are the matches going to be good? Well, that's another question, probably. But I still think it's a on paper, looking up and down the cards, yeah, can Hangman and Swerve possibly be bad? No. MJF and Jay White probably will be good. But I think it's on the lesser end of the great in-ring AEW pay-per-views as well. I think that's more of a thumbs slightly up rather than down, but I'm not as confident as I would usually be. But all in all, yeah, I'd say I'm maybe slightly more negative than positive on it for me. How about you, Gareth?
Well, after all that positivity that I've put into the way that they've structured the storylines, like I've got to be positive about this, and like I am. Like this is going to be the first pay-per-view that I sit up and watch live.
You're gonna watch it?
I can't. Oh, I can't even remember the last time I sat up. And it's not since I closed GRAPPL. Did
Amazing.
am I going to have I sat up and watched an AEW
Wow.
pay-per-view live? But I really,
I'm
really
getting the last train home from London, mate, and I'm going to be a bit pissed. I'll be texting you on the way home. You still up, Gareth? I'll be anyway. It's Crosby.
All right. No, I'll be fucking up, and like I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait for the MJF Jay White match. Like I say, I'm really high on that. Like that's like loving. I'm just loving Jay White at the minute. I just can't get enough Jay White. Like based on the build and things.
Not a phrase this podcast has said over the years.
Well, no, I was going to say
Definitely changed.
It's totally changed from that point of view. But like I say, I think it's been great. But I mean, not just for the match, not just for that story to that point, just that intrigue that you say, JP, about you're assuming there's going to be some sort of like payoff here with, from a the devil character stuff or something. There's going to be some twist in the tail here that I'm looking forward to. The Orange Cassidy John Moxley match, like, yeah, that's something that they haven't focused on as much, kind of thing. But the small elements that have like built into this, the more serious version of Orange Cassidy that we've had in the last sort of month or so, him sort of like saying the other day, like, I almost don't feel like I've got to beat John Moxley really to be the champion because you beat me last time, you beat me for it, kind of thing. Like that puts a bit of something in me there that I think this is going to be a hard hitting. Like I'm high on that. I think Orange Cassidy Moxley is going to be potentially show stealer on this one. I think it's going to be really good. The way they go out there, I think with it being a Texas Death Match, I think Hangman and Swerve are just going to kick the living shit out of each other for however long that they get for that. So that's one that again really looking forward to from that standpoint. So there's 3 matches there that I think are going to be like top tier for a variety of reasons there as well. Then from a storyline perspective, I can't obviously, you're negative on like Edge and stuff like that, but I'm just intrigued. I'm just intrigued to see where that 6-man goes. Okay, it's not going to be a fucking 4.5-star classic sort of thing, but as far as a entertaining 12-minute match on a pay-per-view that's going to sort of like fill the gap between some of the others, there'll be some big eye spots and things like that. It's going to be one of those where they do things to send people home happy because they know what they're fucking doing with it. I think that'll be good. Not even though I'm a big Shida fan, I'm not so high on this one just because Tony Storm's not going to work this match in a credible style, is she, sort of thing. So I just can't see this being anything other than some bells and whistles comedy gimmick piece kind of thing, which is what it is what it is. I'm probably more intrigued with the other women's match because I think Julia Hart's been brilliant in this time period as well. I think her character development and in-ring development's like really good. I've really enjoyed that overlapping storyline as just a basic on the fringe storyline that they've had going on with like Willow Nightingale and Sky Blue and like Statlander and things like that. It's just been something that it's felt like there's a secondary match here in a women's match in AEW that's actually been given a reason to exist, sort of thing, and they've put like a bit of storyline behind it that's into a few people. So I'm intrigued to see that where that goes. And then, like from the tag match standpoint, Bucks and Jericho Omega's going to be good. Like it's not going to shit the bed unless Jericho's dominating the match for 25 minutes or something like that. But in the main, they're going to put something together that's entertaining for me. And then the World Tag Team match, just, you know, whizzing through them.
Yeah,
you know, that feels.
We'll go through the cards.
So, you know, that feels. You know, that feels like one that's been, you know, probably the most last minute kind of thing. But
yeah,
it is what it is.
Well, let's go through them then. Through the card. Apparently, we think the pre-show is MJF and Samoa Joe. Presumably, people are going to be listening to this. Dynamite's probably going to already have happened, and you know, unless they do a massive swerve in the story, that is the match: MJF and Samoa Joe against the Guns. Aspect of this we haven't really talked about is MJF doing double duty. Yeah, again, I don't love that as an aspect of it. I prefer if he did one or the other, which was kind of the case with the last one. With that said, JP, do you see it going any other way? MJF and Joe win leads to MJF and Joe as a match. Guns got a shot here. Like I say, MJF's a Superman. He beat the other lads on his own. So you know, surely this is going to be you know, if the righteous are in it to go by, Guns don't stand a chance here.
Well, it's funny. I think the Guns are winning this because I think this is the perfect opportunity to take these belts as they should do. Them being Ring of Honor tag champs, I'm fine. I'm not fine with Ring of Honor titles at all being involved in the company, but if you're going to give them to a tag team act who are going to be like, you know, in some ways get the most out of it by just, it adds to the fact they're even more dickish. They're not even the AEW tag champions, the Ring of Honor tag belts, which I never gave a shit about when it was just Ring of Honor, really, outside of when the Briscoes had them. Bookies would agree with me on that. Guns are 9-4 on, and MJF and Mystery Partner are 13-8. Now, obviously, I could see a situation where he rejects Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe comes out and costs him it. Because the Guns are part of Bullet Club Gold, in many ways, you can have that happen to then add what is going to be the element of doubt before the Jay White match later on. From a storyline perspective, that's how you can kind of possibly get around it. But in many ways, I kind of think it's one of the things I've disliked about the MJF storylines is having him be Ring of Honor tag champions, because it never feels like it means anything. And it's weird when you've got him with two belts and one of them is the most important belt and the other one is one of the least important belts that knock around that company. And I think this is just a way of getting rid of that to happen as well. And particularly, I don't know, if Adam Cole turns out to be the devil, you can use it to give him a reason to fucking attack him. But again, it's just mental saying the idea that Ring of Honor World Tag Team belts. This is one of those matches that, does it really need to happen in the scheme of things? No, absolutely not. But then I was never a fan of getting this Ring of Honor tag belts thing fucking involved in the first place. It just seemed like bollocks. The Adam Cole injury obviously didn't help, but there are other ways perhaps of just going around this rather than MJF having to plow through the righteous. But I'm expecting the Guns to win. Be full of bullshit, but I expect them to win. Gareth.
Are you on mute, Ben? Sorry, I can't hear.
Yeah, go.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, it's an intriguing one. I mean, I'd probably, you know, it feels like the opportunity to, like you just say, JP, get the belts off him. Like, I think there's got to be a good, creative, inventive way of doing it, which would be, you know, interesting and feed into something that would happen later on in the show and things like that. You don't want him hanging around with these belts for too long. When's Cole back? Do you know? Like, has there been any indication?
I haven't seen anything about this in terms of the injury of him coming back, which is always one of the things of, in some ways, they don't want to let people know, because then that gives you an idea of whether or not is he going to be the devil in the storyline. I think that might be some of the reasons why you wouldn't want to tell people in the first place.
I wondered if that might be something that they do to throw off the scent, or something like Cole might be okay here or something like that, and then be the devil later or something like that. You know, there could be some sort of quirk they could do here that then feeds into the Joe stuff or something like that. But I'm happy. Strap the guns up. Loving the guns. Like, so, yeah. Stick the belts on them. Stick all the belts on them.
I've always said that they'd be best for like some kind of. And I'm back. The cat unplugged me all my cables, so that was fun. She wants to go outside. I'll let her out in a minute.
I saw her making an appearance across the camera there at one point as well. Bless her.
Everything's gone, but we're good. But yeah, I've always said they'd be great as like if you had like a US tag team title. Not that I'm asking for Tony Khan to have more belts, but where like their first initial run with the tag belts didn't feel like a real one. For the AEW belts, so the ROH belts would make sense. They'd fit that kind of purpose, and it might be a way of getting MJF out of this bit of a dead end. I think that this element of the story is if Adam Cole's not coming back anytime soon, because I do think. I don't know. I've always leave the possibility open for there being a bit of a work there. I absolutely believe he's injured. How injured is he? I think is still in question. And yeah, I don't know. But maybe if the plan was for him to come back sooner and he is going to be out a while, I don't think we need to carry on with this element of the story. I think we can move on. Going from there into the first match of the show proper, at least as far as the order in there we've got here: Hikaru Shida versus Tony Storm. Again, the match will be good, won't it? Not for us, really. This pretty much this entire feud, I would say, JP, and just the whole Tony Storm thing. I did hear them say on the flagship this week, would you rule out AEW putting the entire match in black and white, like the old Fiend red lighting? Probably, but it's not impossible with the way things going at the minute. But yeah, presumably Mariah May gets involved. What do you make of that aspect of the story? Like as far as bringing Mariah May in, and I actually don't mind that bit. I'd say, God, I don't enjoy Tony Storm as the overall act. I think it was fun for a couple of weeks. It was a TikTok meme that got old quite quickly for me. But I think the Mariah May element of it, of being the crazed fan, the Mickey James equivalent, or if you listen to the weekend show in my old EWR games, Amazing Red, I'd have him as Rey Mysterio stuff. It was one of my greatest ever storylines, if I do say so myself. Tony Khan clearly had the same one going in his game. I actually don't mind it. I think it's bringing someone in with a bit of purpose, and yes, it's into a hokey act, but it's better than it just being another faceless wrestler on the roster, I would say. And I do think she's probably going to help Tony Storm win here and then eventually turn down the line.
Yeah, my view on it is it's just dependent on how good Mariah May is at playing the part, really, because I think to be going into something like a big character like this and the way that Tony Storm's been presented, I think, again, it's one of these where not my cup of tea, but I think the way that she's presented herself in doing what she's trying to do has been good in the way she's done it. I think Mariah May is going to have the chops to be able to play along with that in the form that it's been presented. Otherwise, it's going to look quite like disjointed. Everything about it suggests that it's going to lead into the story of that happening. But I feel like this match is going to be more. Again, it is going to be a bit more gimmicky, a bit more bells and whistles than a classic maybe 2 years ago if Shida and Tony Storm just went out there and had a wrestling match. I'd have probably been higher on it. Whereas this is one that it's just, to me, it just feels like it was just going to be a mechanism to just shift the belt across to Tony Storm and just build this character even more, to be honest. So this is probably, like I say, despite being a Shida fan, this is probably one of the matches that I'm lower on, really, that I'm not expecting much from.
You guys have said kind of my Richard. You've kind of said the main thoughts of what I think. Mariah May's going to get involved effectively. It's whether or not Tony Storm will do the memory loss thing. That was a part of her gimmick at one point that she wouldn't quite remember what was going on. Remember that? That feels like that happened fucking years ago. Again, bookies have Tony Storm 3-1 on. Feels like this match is a mechanic to put the belt onto her. Hikaru Shida's 2-1. That's Tony Storm's winning.
Not a fan of Lufa though, JP. I was disappointed.
Absolutely not, mate. Shit. Why is he there? Why is he?
Again, he's still got a job.
We never spoke. I mean, there's so many things we were talking about. Can I just say, you could cut 3/4 of that roster away, and trust me, him, Cutler, Nakazawa. I don't even know if I'd send them a letter. I just would make sure their fobs didn't work to get in the building and just leave them fucking figure it out.
No, in preparation for this show, I did a spreadsheet of the entire roster to just go and read down it and just get my thoughts together on everybody. And I had 60 members of the male roster that I'd just highlighted in red that were entirely irrelevant and just had no part to play. 60 guys, unbelievable.
Well, 6 of them are in this next match, which is a Tony Khan special. There's like 20 of them when we get to the tag match later, lads. Fucking hell. Almost my former bowling partner, some WXW made it, but they didn't. But yeah, we got firstly trios match: Christian Cage, Luchasaurus, and Nick Wayne against Adam Copeland, to the Cope himself, Darby Allin, and Sting. Team Old Man versus, well, kind of Team Old Man. What have you? I mean, Cope in general in AEW. Like, I was never going to give him a long leash, Gareth. He was always going to be, he was going to be quickly blamed for all of AEW's wrongs by me. And I will choose that opportunity to just blame him entirely for a collision dropping regularly below the around the 400,000 range, and a shit demo that the movies in that time slot only a few months ago probably would have been doing. But yeah, either and what have you made of his work at AEW so far? I think my summation would be utterly unspectacular, and it's I don't know. Is there a version of Adam Copeland you want to see at AEW? Like, and does it exist outside of like the Christian Cage verse? Isn't that maybe the problem?
I mean, to be honest, he's met my expectations of what he would be, which is completely average and like doing nothing of any real note and not improving anything in any way. He's just there, isn't he, on a big contract, and he's not even like, he hasn't even got the name, so you're not even buying the big name. He's having to buy, you're buying the real name sort of thing. So there's even a bit of cachet that's slightly lost there with that. I mean, he's never a guy I've been massively invested in outside of the music. So like, I enjoy the music hitting kind of thing, which is always just like a good feeling. But beyond that, he's just, I mean, they've put him straight in with Christian, obviously, because obviously you're going to do that. It's the natural.
It's hard to avoid. Even I don't like it, but I understand why. I understand. Yeah, they have to get it out the way. Could it have been a promo on Dynamite though? Could we have moved on? Like,
but I mean, I just look at this and I mean, the telling thing about this match is that despite obviously him coming in as like the big name signing this year for AEW, this match is all about Christian, Darby Allin, and Sting, isn't it? You're still looking at those three and going, they're the three guys that you're most interested about in this match. You know, it's one of those. They're gonna put on something good. It's gonna be like fun. They're gonna have some big spots and things like that they're building there. That's going to be worth watching. There's going to be like some, there's definitely going to be like something good that happens between Christian and Adam Copeland. That's going to be, notable or something like that you would have thought. But otherwise, just get this done. Singles match. Get after this. Get it out of the way and fucking move on. But you say move on. I literally don't know what Adam Copeland moves on to, because I can't see anything of anybody on this roster that you'd want him to be paired with, involved in, or anything like that that's going to be greater than or improve anything that's already out there. Like, who do you pair him with that's going to be good and interesting, like that you really want to see? Nobody at all. Like, I don't see what his role is going to be in this company. It's going to take one monumental U-turn. Fucking
Christian got us, didn't he? So we won't rule it out, but like,
Christian was always
lucky on that.
Yeah. I just think as well, JP. I don't think this will be the end of it. Looking at it, it's a 6-man tag, innit? They're gonna do Copeland and Cage. Probably in a steel cage or a TLC match or something like that.
There's a singles to come. Yeah.
TLC match, 100%. Like 100%, they're going to do that, aren't they? That's going to be, might be on TV, it might be on the December pay-per-view, but this is going to drag on. And drag is probably the key word for me, JP.
I think that is going to be the issue with it. I mean, I always held the point of view, in fact, that they should have done the surprising thing, which is not go to this. You could have had the acknowledgement and Christian Cage getting angry that his Ultimate's come in and overshadowed him because he's having these matches with like people who've never had before. Because I think that would have been the only way of kind of introducing him, is if you're kind of putting him in there and it's him and Kenny Omega, the safe for argument's sake, because you've never seen it. just because, just trying to go for the fresh as much as anything else. So, yeah, this match, I mean, they'll win, won't they? Copeland, Allen, Sting, and the child will be the one who takes the fall in this. It won't, like, the thing I think about Adam Copeland, it was like, you were asking earlier, I was like, what asking Gareth, what do you think of him coming in? I was like, do you know what? I scarcely remember him being on shows like in Collision, and he was in the fucking main event. Like, it's just shocking.
Yeah.
It was the last thing I saw, and it was like, oh Christ, he was on that, wasn't he? It was like, it should be the last thing I remember about that show. He's just become a person there. Now, the irony being is that when that fucking Percy Jackson series gets on fucking Disney Plus, I'm gonna be faced with more of the bastard because he's in that every fucking episode. So I'll be made to watch that as well on top of it, and I'll be there, and I'll probably end up I'll end up disliking that as a result. Sting will do. We know how this match goes. It'll end up probably being a bit more fun mainly because of Sting. But then he's got the albatross of having to carry around a fucking lunatic old man who could die at any particular moment as well, which is not the kind of thing you want to be thinking of in a professional wrestling match, because Ric Flair's going to be there, which appears to be his punishment for the last few months of his retirement. Got to look after him. Which
Oh yeah, he's down in the corner, is he? Yeah,
I think the lads from Weekend at Bernie's had an easier job carrying around a corpse than what you would do with like Ric Flair, because at least Bernie wasn't going to be potentially tearing up the place and getting himself fucking arrested. So,
do we know what's the betting odds on this one, JP?
It's the Sting, Darby Allin, Cope team 9-2 on.
Makes sense.
Yeah, the Cage family is 11-4. One thing I would like to say, I want to see Nick Wayne change his name to Nick Cage as well, which I know is close to Nick Gage, but we want to see that.
Yeah, McGuinness made that joke, didn't he, on Collision? It was the one time he's been funny on an episode of Collision, I think. That and calling the Righteous Brothers, actually, that did get a joke on me too.
He said they never had that loving feeling, and I was like, all right. Since Tony's been there, he's fucking throwing out all the gags.
Moving on from there, again, rematch, but a strong one. I probably should have included this when I said, you guarantee good matches on the show. Orange Cassidy and John Moxley. That's a positive for me. The match will be good. But this one, I think again, if I'm talking from a mathematical, scientific approach to wrestling, it makes sense. The injury to Moxley happened. Orange Cassidy ended up getting the belt back, kind of like default. With Phoenix in the middle as well. And to, both in storyline and in real life, to be the real international champion, he has to face Moxley. So we're here. Whether that means we carry on with the Moxley story as champion or Orange Cassidy's got it back for good, I don't know. It makes logical sense. I'm just not that invested in it. I think it's probably because they had such a great payoff. Like their feud was done. The main event's the pay-per-view, and it was like, wow, how fucking great! What a great moment that was. We're done now. Orange Cassidy sorted, and it's like, oh, we're going back to it this soon. And I know it's circumstances, but I can't help that doesn't necessarily excite me. And just in general, I don't enjoy the Blackpool Combat Club. Made the point a million times. Doesn't need to turn into a Blackpool Combat Club slagging off session. I don't know. The hard-nosed baby faces who are sometimes heels, who are all about being the toughest and all of that stuff, just doesn't work for me. And I think I find them quite inconsistent as characters across the TV. On the one hand, Bryan Danielson wants to murder people in the ring. On the other hand, he's standing there politely with Tony Khan while we announce tournaments like he's, a member of the office. 1 week he's a babyface, next week he's a heel. And I know they're trying to do shades of grey with it, but all in all, it's just my biggest complaint about the Blackpool Combat Club is that it shouldn't exist in the first place, because there is better individual use of all them men than that. Sorry, I said I wasn't going to turn it into an assassination of the Blackpool Combat Club, but I did, so whatever. Match will be good. Don't really care. Presumably Moxley gets his belt back. That's my guess. Gareth.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I think this is one that I just think you can't throw these two in the ring together and it would not be good for me. And I think it's something it's going to have a bit more aggression and a bit more needle about it than like even the last one. Like, it just feels like it's something that's just going to be a bit more heated with this sort of slight evolution in the Orange Cassidy character and things like that. Obviously, Moxie's going to be bleeding the first time he gets touched and things. So, there's going to be that to like factor into the process as well. That is that it's going to like have that kind of like hard hitting sort of just try to he's obviously going to be trying to knock hell out of Orange Cassidy and get his belt back and things. So I can't see this one being bad. Again, this is probably the one where you think about storylines. It does feel sort of like more neglected again by circumstance. It does feel something that's kind of been brought back together slightly later in the day, this one. But I think some of the recent stuff like that Orange Cassidy Claudio match and things where they're used as obviously that's a Blackpool Combat Club thing. I think that was a brilliant match the other week. I've thoroughly enjoyed that when that opened the show. Then so they've kind of kept that thread running through. But if this is a bad match, I'll eat my hat.
What say the odds makers, JP? Are they siding with young babyface John Moxley, who just wants to get his belt back and beat him until he dies? Is that what they're going with?
They are 7-4 on Moxley. Orange Cassidy 6-5, so it's actually quite close. I have to say, if I'm thinking about it, and this is the thing I had when I was thinking about this. I always have this thing about, is there going to be 3 good matches on this card? 3 matches I'm actually looking forward to. This is as a match because I loved the first match at the pay-per-view. I thought it was great. I think what they're going to try and do is they're going to have Moxley win it back because it doesn't feel like Orange Cassidy should beat him. Like we need to get back into the kind of intensity, and this is the way of getting back into it, is by them having a really good match, which I'm convinced that they will have. And Orange Cassidy is one of those people where I felt when we spoke about your Swerve Stricklands and the Jay Whites who are being elevated, Orange Cassidy very much in that person who should be in and around that main event mix, because he's one of the people who adds something completely unique and fresh and something that you don't see in other companies. I think that's he offers that much, whilst at the same time, the character kind of works as soon as people see it in kind of the mainstream terms. I think there's still so much they can end up doing with it. But the way for that to happen is for Moxley to win this in another war, which then we get the third one where Orange Cassidy finally wins, where we get a Moxley run, which is him being dominant, just hoping he avoids injury and everything else. And then whether it be at World's End or whether we even take it up to say even a Revolution, whatever the January pay-per-view will be, is then you can go back to that again. But while the build for it's not been great, I'm expecting Moxley to win. And then just replay the feud.
Up from there, next up, Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland, or at least this is what the fine people at Wikipedia think is coming up next. Texas Deathmatch, it is now. So yeah, obviously
Blood.
you talked, blood, unless Moxley will beat them too, but they'll do it too. But we've talked at length of maybe our disagreements on investments in the story itself. I think the outlying question for me, I had to send my piece on that side, is this it, or do we get a third match? I think when they first had this feud, I think most people fantasy booked a feud where there's a obvious argument to have Swerve win the first one, and then you make Hangman work to get his win back, and then you use that to make Hangman Page, God forbid, a main character in AEW who doesn't disappear for weeks at a time, and is constantly a focus. Like I say, he's not Brock Lesnar. Hangman Page, he doesn't benefit from being off TV. It just doesn't work. We've seen it over the last couple of years or so. You want to see him motivated and in prime positions, so that makes me think it's either is it a Hangman win here and we're done, or are they going 3 and maybe Swerve wins the second and Hangman gets the third? Personally, I'd misgivings about the story aside and the tone of it, I'd like to see Swerve win again, and then maybe Hangman wins the decider at the end. But yeah, my main hope for this one, Gareth, is that it's not one and done.
Yeah, I feel very much like I feel very much like that it'll go somewhere again. It doesn't feel like they're not just going to have one match now and then that's it, just blown off in this scenario. And I'm the same as you. I feel like Swerve should win, but I think this should be used as a way of just bringing out that fucking nastiness in Hangman, because we've seen how nasty Swerve can be, in various elements. We can see how much of a cunt he can be, and in the different process that he's gone to since winning that first match. That aggression that Hangman brought when I was talking about him, hitting the dead eye off the stage, that's just what you want to see him bring here. And this is where you want to almost like that evolution probably of the Hangman character a bit kind of thing, of just getting rid of that anxious millennium cowboy kind of thing, and it's just been like been actually no, he is a fucking ass kicking hard bastard who will fucking go to the absolute depths to get the win when you need him to, and then hopefully he can like kick on out of this and become that kind of genuine, you know, main event like cool person that you want to like get behind, who feels a bit more credible and things like that, because we've talked ad nauseum over the years that that's where he should be, and he's always been presented as being a bit weak and a bit kind of like he vanishes and stuff like that. Like, you know, you saw the way the crowd got behind him the other night when he did come out and do that. And like I say, Biff said earlier, he looked as cool as fuck. He looked like a top main event guy. He's young. He's got miles on the clock. He can have great matches with so many different people. Again, this is one that I just think this is just going to be brutal. I think it's going to be a brutal war where Swerve's going to be trying nasty shit, but I think it's going to really bring out the violent side of Hangman and, you know, almost like flip the switch with him as well. Like, I genuinely cannot wait for this match. I think it's going to be an absolute banger.
Yeah, like you said, Benno, misgivings about the build to this particular match aside, like this again, like Cassidy Moxley, I loved the first one. Can't wait to see this one. Bookies are Hangman Page's favourite at 3-1 on Swerve Strickland 2-1, but I think it's one of those where if you're going to make, like, you're going to go for the underdog, it would be Swerve Strickland here, because I think you can do that within the. It's almost like you can get Adam Page being too angry going into this and he can't control it, and that being his kind of his downfall, and Swerve being that bit more calculating and knowing to get around it. It'll just be, I imagine they're going to be going for like a different type of match, and it'll be violent and bloody. It's what it should be, although Moxley will be like very much hold my non-alcoholic beer at this stage. So for that, so I'm fully I'm expecting Swerve Strickland to win, and then perhaps Hangman. A nice little twist would be if Hangman and Page won, like say, managed to have the third one as being like a number one contenders match, and he wins that, which then means you can go back to it, because then that would just piss off Swerve Strickland that the one with those kind of big stakes at the end of it is the one that in fact he ends up losing. I think that would be like kind of like an interesting way to go on it.
Yeah, and I think as well we got to ready ourselves for the discourse of when Swerve wins 2, but Hangman wins to the side, that it's going to be like, for fuck's sake, and it's like, no, we need to just take a step back and go the totality of where Swerve is now, even if he loses the overall feud, a bit like I'm going to get into with Jay White, he's going to be, no matter what, in a better position coming out of it, and that's the absolute positive of this feud. Moving on from there, Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega. I refuse to call them by any other name because no one else ever calls them by any other name other than Christopher Irvine. Golden Jets, my ass. Against the Young Bucks. Obviously, there was a news note that it was Nick Jackson, wasn't it? Was on his Instagram this week saying if it wasn't for this match, they wouldn't be doing anything on the pay-per-view. Amongst maybe some potential grumblings about the creative. For those lads at the minute in AEW, amongst some kind of, presumably they won that tag title shot because they were going to actually be facing the tag champions, but then the tag champions weren't FTR anymore. There's something going on. I would expect it to break at some point. Something has clearly been reshuffled here, I would say. I've said to JP a couple of times, Gareth, not a Jericho fan. Like you said before, I'd like him to spend most of this match on the apron. But I think for the negative of the Elite and Friends are doing melodrama again, the positive is if it gets people on the right sides, then I'll be happy. If we work hard, the biggest thing for me is less who wins, less what happens next with the tag titles. Young Bucks keep this edge of basically being heels that they had on Dynamite last week, where they felt the most motivated they've felt in fucking months, and Kenny Omega just gets away from them. In real life, not just as a storyline for this particular feud, or maybe that's going too far. But at least on screen is his own man, separate from the Elite universe. And we get to the point you were saying, Gareth, with Kenny Omega, where he is his own man, and he does get that proper Kenny Omega singles push. That's what I'm hoping to come out of this. To get there, maybe Young Bucks win with a bit of bullshit, but I would maybe think that it's more likely Omega and Jericho go over. Otherwise, why is the match happening in the first place? But what say you, Gareth? What's your take on this one?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those that I think it'll be good. I find it hard to believe that these aren't going to piece together like a good match between them. I like that edge to the Young Bucks in the interview, like coming out of the last couple of weeks, the backstage stuff and things like that. It just feels like I feel like they're at the best when they're like they've got that sort of like dickish sort of chip on the shoulder about them. I think that's generally when they seem to sort of like pull off the best character work as well as the best sort of most compelling in-ring stuff as well. So just interested to see where this goes. It wouldn't surprise me if, like, you know, there's with what I was talking about previously with Kenny, if there's some way that like there's a Jericho situation that costs the match, that means the Bucks win, that makes Kenny go like, why am I fucking teaming with you, kind of thing, and kind of accelerates this kind of singles element, this, being his own man and being a lone wolf, getting him away from the Bucks, getting him away from Jericho and things. Maybe that's just hopeful thinking on my part, or something that's going to be the case, and this Omega Jericho thing doesn't run its course too much. But I think clearly, based on what came out of that interview the other day, it looks like it is going to be a feature of just separating Omega from the Bucks. But it'd be interesting to see what happens there. Don Callis getting involved in there, maybe in some way. It would sort of make sense, wouldn't it? Really, if there's some, I don't know if the Bucks go down that route necessarily, kind of thing. But it's, I think, is probably going to play some kind of role in the finish here, isn't it?
Best case scenario is the Bucks effectively kind of change, and it might mean even changing up. Well, I would hope it means changing up their look and everything about them, because one of my big, massive complaints, and I've said plenty about them and their roles in EVPs or their non-roles in EVPs. And I haven't weirdly said it tonight. In fact, this is the first time we've kind of like mentioned them. And I had them in my fucking top 5 favorite tag teams of all time.
Still surprised about that.
I want this to, partly because I want this to be the catalyst for them to be completely non-elite stuff, and it's just the Bucks thinking about themselves and being fucking dicks and arseholes, because that is kind of when they're absolutely at their best. The problem, like, again, with this, like, there's the storyline issues I have with it, where we've gone from Kenny Omega going to Takeshita. And funny enough, in preparation for this, I watched a near 25-minute Chris Jericho match, which I'm probably going to spend all of 25 seconds describing in a little bit.
More time than AEW spent promoting it, mate.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they mentioned it on Rampage, didn't they? It's like they had to fucking just completely just get it into it there. It was, ridiculous.
Like 2 hours before it aired, like, wasn't it? Because
Yeah.
Rampage was like 3 a.m. on Friday. What was the match? Like 7 on Saturday. Like,
fucking insane, isn't it? For this, am I excited by it? No. Like, I'm not excited by this match necessarily at all. It's more, okay, it feels, because it's Jericho, and this is the problem, is there is this big Jericho stipulation thing of, well, we've created the Golden Jets, we can't get rid of them. The only time they've ever had that is when they got rid of, was it Y2AJ? Like, and they made t-shirts and they got rid of that after like 2 weeks. I think that's the only precedent for something like this disappearing. But it makes me, like, in terms of the bookies, they've got Omega and Jericho at 5-1 on, and they've got the Bucks at 3-1 to win this. But I think it's going to probably end up being that they do win it, and then post-match, what I'm hoping is just the Bucks go fucking nasty, turn into absolute uber dicks there afterwards, like slate off the likes of us and everything else, and become like complete arsehole heels. I think that's like the best case scenario. If we don't end up down that route, and we end up with Kenny Omega tied into a tag team with Chris Jericho, it's just like, if you thought I moaned a lot about AEW currently, and fuck me, strap yourselves in, because I'll be fucking kicking off about that, because that's not something I want to see long term at all. Is a 53-year-old Chris Irvine fucking all over the shop in AEW all over again, while they take the last few potential good years of Kenny Omega's career with him fucking around with him. So, yeah.
Well, outside of that, what else we got on the show? 3 more matches. Firstly, we don't know this one as we're recording this on Tuesday night, but Julia Hart versus Chris Statlander, and the winner of Sky Blue and Red Velvet. I'll go with you first, Gareth. You said you were quite invested in this one. There is, possibly for the first time ever, more than one AEW women's program going on right now. We're not quite in the double digits, mate, but there's quite a bit going on at the point specifically around these three. Go for it.
Yeah. No, I think it's like I say. I think it's more the work of Julia Hart that's been the best part about this for me. I think she's been excellent. Her character stuff, like I think her in-ring's got like a hell of a lot better. I just think she sort of like really carries herself well and like sort of like credibly in that role. She just doesn't look like there's any like nervousness in her or anything. She just buys into it like completely. Whereas, a lot of on the women on the AEW roster, they don't seem to have any kind of like identity or don't seem to have any kind of like I don't know, sort of presence really in who they are. So, I mean, I'm fully expecting that she's going to win the belt here, and but I just think that the way that they've built to this has just been a bit something different with the stuff going on with Sky Blue and with Willow Nightingale, and obviously like with those like being historically Chris Statlander's friend and things like that, and the different parts they've played here. It's not fucking ridiculously amazing storytelling or anything like that by any means. It's very much falls into that category of what you were saying previously about putting effort into it kind of thing. That's the positive sort of thing, is that there's actually been some effort into it, and if that's the least that you can expect, well, great, they've actually put some effort into a sort of a second women's program here, and I think they'll see the benefit as a whole out of it, because there's going to be sort of 3 or 4 people who've been involved in this feud that are all higher than they were 8 weeks ago, 9 weeks ago or something as a result of this. But I'd expect or hope Julia Hart gets strapped up here, and they just continue to do more there on TV, because she's been good.
I'll say the odds makers, JP.
Do you know what? I haven't got odds for this one. It's quite weird. Certainly not on Sky Bet. Maybe there is. I'd have to check on Paddy Power for that. But I kind of see a similar situation where it's set up for Julia Hart. They're clearly very, very keen on. This is a way of her getting the title across. It's whether I'm expecting a heel turn as well, whether it's Sky Blue or whether it's Willow Nightingale, which wouldn't be something I think would be necessarily a good idea. I think it could end up being one of that kind of situation, because you can kind of get away with it. And let's be honest, this Chris Statlander run, it kind of feels like it's run its course, frankly, doesn't it? It's not really going anywhere. There's not really anything doing. You're keen on Julia Hart. Well, you might as well do something there on that case. So, yeah, I just think, I think there's just, exactly put the belt onto her. I mean, I think again, it's like we're giving out praise for them doing the thing that is sort of very obvious, which is they've managed to put 2 women's matches where, in theory, if Sky Blue is there, all of the people have reasons to be in that title match, and it's less thrown together, even if it is a multi-person match. Although, don't be surprised if they just go, "Oh, we'll add Willow Nightingale into the mix for shits and giggles," because that would be classic kind of Tony AEW Women's Championship special. But yeah, I'd go with that. Julia Hart will win. I'm sure she's my favourite.
For me, it doesn't necessarily need Sky Blue or Red Velvet, but I'd say that about Sky Blue on every AEW show, because she appears to be wrestling on every AEW show right now. I hope it's Red Velvet, just because she's a little bit more fresh right now. And I think, for me, I think Julia Hart's kind of got a bit of something behind her right now, a bit of momentum. So I think I'd go with her, and I hope she doesn't suffer the same fate as Chris Statlander did, and that that's a Tony Khan trope. You win the title, and then it's like, oh well, done. James always talks about that momentum just grinds to a halt, doesn't it? Once you achieve the goal you were going for, and that's kind of happened with her through not much fault of her own, but I think it's probably time to move on. On that note, the semi-main event, at least as far as we've got listed here. I'm sure it'll probably be a bit earlier on the cards, but we got LFI versus Ricky Starks and Big Bill versus FTR versus House of Black for the AEW World Tag Team titles in a match that, we all definitely expected to be on this card. Odd one, this one. For feels like the tag division is Collision still, despite Punk being gone. And most of the build for this has happened there with some strange alliances and some strange show closing segments with this lot of lads. Presume it's a way to get the belts back on FTR, because Ricky Starks and Big Bill have never felt like a tag team. If anything, they started with Ricky Starks being Big Bill's manager. Wasn't that the point? But anyway, with presumably the belts go back on FTR, and maybe that clues you up who's winning the Jericho Omega tag. But what say you, Gareth?
Yeah, this is one that, while I've been doing the FTR and House of Black stuff, they've sort of, obviously that's something that's built over a little bit of time there, and just over probably the last fortnight they seem to have done stuff with LFI and Starks and Big Bill. This definitely, of all the matches on the card, feels like the one is the most thrown together and has got the least substance behind it, despite at least actually having some substance behind it, which again is a step change for some matches that have gone on pay-per-views in the past. But I don't know, I'd be disappointed, to be honest, if they do take the belts off Starks and Big Bill personally. I'm not a huge Ricky Starks guy. I'm not a huge Ricky Starks guy as a main event player. What Ricky Starks has got a role to me, and that is as somebody who's in a tag team act that's sort of mid-card, upper mid-card, and I think him and Big Bill's a good pairing. When Starks had that singles match the other night and Big Bill was on commentary, like, he came across fantastic. He came across with more charisma in 5 minutes than Ricky Starks did of doing 3 months of commentary that he did at that point. So I almost see the partnership as being another good mechanism to just kind of like continue to elevate Big Bill further, because again, obviously we've all been pretty high on him this year and the advancements that he's made. I mean, this is another step in the process for him to like continue to make them. So I'm just hoping that they keep hold of the belts and they just, keep kind of just pushing them really as an act on this basis. If the belts just land back with FTR, like, really, what are we doing? Like, that's not interesting, to be honest. I think FTR's my last choice to win the belts out of this match. I'd be more interested in seeing either LFI or House of Black even, take the belts ahead of these, ahead of FTR getting them again. Oh yeah, I don't want them to win them, but probably more so than FTR. There's other things that FTR can be doing than having the tag belts again.
JP, as a media teacher, can you sit Alistair Black down and make him watch any other TV show than Game of Thrones, and make him watch any other wrestler other than The Undertaker and prime fiend Bray Wyatt? Like, there's not a wrestler I dislike more. It's like the promo they cut on Collision this week, where like the promo was fine, but it's like all of the creative they do. Like at the end of the promo, they all walk slowly backwards to fade out of the shot. It's like, hang on, follow that to its logical conclusion. Leave the camera running. Where are they going? Like, what's going to happen if you just left the camera running? Because at some point they're going to have to stop, and then it's like, why did you walk backwards, lads?
They're on an escalator.
He's got so many ideas like that, though. So like, you just spend a couple of seconds, like, just pulling the logic a little bit, pull the band-aid a little bit. Like, why is it when you shoot mist on somebody, does it stay on the body? Because presumably in real life they're painting that back on themselves every week. Why are they doing that? Alice Black doesn't think about that because he's never thought about anything in more depth than that. It's like magic. Undertaker and Kane did it. Sounds good.
I've always wanted to know what is in the mist. Like, please just explain to me from on a technical level, just for shits and giggles. Explain to me what the mist is and specifically what it does. It surprised you guys probably to learn that Big Bill and Ricky Starks are favourites here, 5-2 on. FTR 3-1, House of Black 9-2, 8-1 LFI, and adds to a completely unnecessary signing, Drillistico. Don't get me wrong, Roosh is a fucking wild card, and I love that aspect about him. He'd be one of those people who would survive Cole's, but Drillistico wouldn't. He wouldn't be around at all. And yeah, House of Black. The thing is, when I saw these guys were kings of the Black Throne, which again, that's not something that's really ever been explained. That they're like PWG fucking tag champions, or they weren't they, for a bit? So why bother with Buddy Matthews? Like, really, in many ways, never seen someone. He is just a proper spare prick at a wedding, isn't he? There's no reason for him to be knocking around the place at all. But yeah, I hope Big Bill and Ricky Starks win. Even if Big Bill on commentary, one of the great things he goes, we've only been teaming for like a week, and look at us, we're tag team champions. And I love that shit. when they were saying when they were on when he was on commentary and they were saying that. So yeah, we're big Bill fans. I'm just hoping that
Big Bill is
managed
someone
to-
in a less cluttered company where you'd be like, oh, could be a good little run for him coming next year. Fortunately, there's 30 other wrestlers ahead of him in the pecking order,
That's
isn't
it.
it? It's like, you want to make a lane for him though, like they should, because he's proper rehabbed himself, and he's someone I want to see in a big spot. I want to see him in that, like, remember that pay-per-view like a couple of years ago where Brody Lee and Lance Archer both had like one of them was with Moxley, the other one was with like Cody maybe, and they were both like the monster of the week type of thing. Like he'd be great in that role. But yeah, will we ever get there? We'll see. On that note, yeah, to the final match of the show, and yeah, we kind of talked about it in quite a bit of detail already. MJF and Jay White for the AEW World Title. All that's left really, I think, is to say which way do we think it's going, and I think that probably does fit into maybe again. I think intellectually, I enjoy that Jay White's coming out of this stronger. I've enjoyed his work right through it. I think I agree with both of you. I think they can, if they add the element of mystery, as much as I've maybe found it a little bit too MLW, the mystery masked man devil stuff. If they outright allude to the fact that that's going to get revealed here, I think that gives this a little bit of juice, because as it stands, does anybody actually think Jay White's beating MJF? No. So I think you maybe need that to give it a little bit more intrigue. Will the match be good? Yeah. Will Jay White come out of it stronger? Yeah. But yeah, I think that's its fatal flaw. I don't think. I mean, tell me, does anyone think Jay White's gonna win this thing, Gareth?
I don't. No, I don't think. I don't think he is. I can't see them going through piecing together all this MJF stuff for him to just lose the belt here now in this scenario. He took the pin as well, didn't he? Was that a week ago? Off Jay pinned him, didn't he? About a week or
yeah,
ago or something like that.
Just supposed to do the other thing, isn't it? But it, like, as a wrestling fan, that means okay, well, he's not winning the match.
Yeah, so there's that side. For me, I would, Jay White's been so good that I'd love to see him having that belt and actually having that belt, kind of, and just I'd be fully on board with them, strapping up and going on a Monster Jay White, heel champion run here with the Gun Club and Juice Robinson sort of like running interference for him and things like that for the next year. I'd be fully on board with that. But no, logically, it's got to be MJF winning it, hasn't it? And it's like you say, Jay's been elevated through this particular feud, and his time will come. I think there's no way anyone can have watched, internally can have watched this last sort of 6 weeks and not thought, no, that lad's having a title run further down the line at some point.
The bookies would agree with both of you, because MJF's 50-1 on 5-0.
Fucking hell.
Which is serious. Jay White's 10-1, which the only way he's winning that title is if there's an injury and they have to call an audible. The only way that's happening. And I think the challenge for this match is all the interest going to be in the post match? Is it going to be one of these matches where we're just waiting to see what happens after
Black Scorpion, mate?
That's it. Yeah. And who that'll be is, I suppose, in many ways, if the bookies were going to do odds on anything, then the one thing you would do it on is, well, if we do get a reveal of the devil, who is that going to end up being? Like, that's where I think, like, the real kind of mystery about this is. But I agree with you. Will Jay White do his damnness to make sure that's the case? I mean, the pair of them will do. They'll do their absolute utmost to make sure this kind of works. And I'm expecting it to work. I've got, again, high hopes for it as a match, for how this is going to end up being. It doesn't have that kind of element of drama to it. It's where we go with the MJF story after this. And in some ways, that's going to also depend on what the openers, what's going to happen with that in terms of the tag match as well with it. But I mean, yeah, there's just no way that MJF is being booked deliberately to not win this match. That's happening. It's all the intrigue is what happens afterwards. Do we get the devil reveal? You'd have to imagine that would be the case. And that should be then the catalyst of what happens TV-wise then for MJF.
I think the only two, if we're going to give prediction on who the devil ends up being, the only two options for me are MJF and Adam Cole. Like, I don't think anything else makes sense. I've heard people say they don't make sense. I do think they do. I think as far as thinking things through, if it turns out that, MJF, who's been trying to act a babyface all this time, is, still got that devil in him, and it's how he's chosen to act out. I think you can make that make sense in a very Bully Ray turned out to be the leaders of Ace of Eight kind of way. I think you can retcon enough that there's not that many gaps in doing that. If it's Adam Cole, I think you can get away with that too. I think that would make sense, and it would give away, not ideal, but if Adam Cole really is injured for the next while, he's on telly, or he's, you know, an ass, you know, the mystery man who, you know, pulls the strings from behind the scenes for Kyle O'Reilly and whoever else ends up being in the stable itself. Outside of that, I don't have another bet. I don't know if you have anyone, Gareth, who it could be. Like, we've joked about it being Punk, obviously, with all of that, but that's a pipe dream, I think. Is there anything else that it
That'd be
could
amazing.
I mean, if it's MJF, then he battered the Acclaimed, didn't he, last week? And so in which case, then he's a heel again. And in which case, where does that sit with like Jay White and stuff like that and things like it? I don't know. It just, especially when you like look at the other people who've been getting quite like prominent, you know, pushes, have been a bit more heelish as well. Like it feels like it is heel heavy kind of throughout the top end of the card. It almost just feels a bit soon for that to be the case to me. It leaves me thinking, if it is MJF, then what next? Where does this go from here, kind of thing? Like, so I can't see that. Like, it just feels like Adam Cole to me. Like, it's got like, that seems the logical thing, doesn't it? That it was like the whole premise of their start of their friendship was built on like who's turning on who and things like that, and there was the whole turning your back and he didn't attack him and things like that and stuff going back to that point. It would, given that MJF does appear to have cemented himself in the mind of the fans as a babyface, like Adam Cole as the heel, but then how does that play into the finish of the match? Like that's, it's just the logic of it just seems a bit off. But I don't know. Give me CM Punk.
I can't help but feel it's going to be Adam Cole, partly because there's a ready-made kind of stable with him as well, and in many ways you can have the Wardlow stuff happen with MJF without there being a title on the line. And you can even have Samoa Joe as a hired gun for Adam Cole. Do you know what I mean? There's things you can do with that where you can make things kind of tie in and make it kind of work. I think the wackiest suggestion was Mustafa Ali, because he knows hacking, because he retribution.
That'll be very WWE. That's a layup for the people who think AEW has become WWE.
Yeah, I think at that point, then I'll be deeply worried for that to be the case. Adam Cole is what it should be, and it's the thing that dramatically makes sense. And I think you can go with him as being like the big heel. And there's like the thing I always find the issue with like sort of babyface chat. I mean, babyface it's the chase, and this allows MJF then to have the proper chase. If we have Adam Cole then beating him in Long Island as well at the World's End pay-per-view, which adds juice to that, and then you have a kind of chase for MJF throughout 2024. It's just the thing that dramatically makes more sense, rather than it was me all along, which again I think I've still got nightmares from that kind of scenario, because it seems like a lot of trouble to go to for no real reason, just gonna fuck with people's heads for a laugh. Like it is, I'm going to create this entire, have the devil character and the rest of it. Whereas Adam Cole.
So it would have to happen after the match as well, wouldn't it?
After the match.
MJF's got to win. So I suppose Adam Cole wants MJF to win, doesn't he? Really, because he wants to beat MJF. So potentially there's that. Potentially he might be involved in MJF winning, and then doing the turn afterwards, mightn't he? And whipping out the mask or something like that. Potentially, that might.
He's the only one whose motivations fit, I think. Like, well, he's the only one. He could be like, yeah, I can understand why he'd want to beat up the Acclaim, like jealousy. Didn't pick Roderick Strong or the lads, and also we beat up Jay White and that because that was to help MJF at the start when he was thinking he was helping him. You can, like I say, you can do that. Sit down. Classic Impact. Bully Ray explains the 6 months of it, Mason and Ace Laws to the camera, and make it work. Which was, I'm making fun of it. It was actually a great segment. Proves you can make anything fucking work, I suppose. If you're,
but I can't. If this was the case, then I would. Hopefully if he's fit, then I would have Adam Cole in that tag match in the pre-show, just to further cement this idea of they're together, and then I'd have them win the belts. I'd have them beat the Guns in the pre-show, or so, so they create that perception of Cole being, he's on his side and then in his corner at the end and things like that before doing the turn. Like that would be that would just kind of work a bit better. But
There we go.
either way, I'm intrigued. You know,
You want MJF. I always think you want MJF chasing because he's the executive producer on Iron Claw, and if that's getting awards buzz at the time, hey, what a better time to have him all over the place.
Cracking way of getting the news in, JP. Good work.
Yeah.
On that note, that is the end of the show. That's the end of our preview and the end of the State of AEW special. It feels like a very classic spot like this. 3 hours are on here, lads. We brought the good
my
times
fault,
back.
isn't
it? It's the three of us together, mate. You get us together. This is how it goes. But those some genuinely good conversations there and back and forth. And appreciate the patrons who've stuck with us there through the late night. Couple of people still in the chat there. And yeah, let us know your thoughts, I suppose, on the Discord, and we'll see how the pay-per-view goes. Obviously, yeah, we did have some new stuff we were going to go into, but maybe leave that for the news update, JP. That'd be a nice little plug for the midweek update with you whenever that's happening. And yeah, that's kind of it, really. Patreon.com/grapple for more enthralling 3-hour podcasts like that. Anything else to say, JP?
Quickest thing. I said 25 seconds. I'm not even going to give it that. You don't need to see Jericho Takeshita. Wrong result. DDT's just fucking nonsense. I don't even know why I bothered. I got visibly angry. Like what
didn't strike me as your thing.
Well, I don't get it. Maybe it's great, but I was watching Hiromu lose an Iron Man title to his own IWGP Junior Heavyweight belt. And I was just like, what am I doing in my life? This is a waste of my time. There's so much other stuff. So I ended up watching CBBS, which felt more mature than what large swains of DDT was. But yeah, Jericho won for reasons, and he was like a face, and it was like, why did I bother? The end. Don't need to see it.
Wonder if there'll be a recap of that on Dynamite. And also, we didn't get a chance to talk much about the Tone 1, but I'm guessing by the time Dynamite comes, there'll be a lineup for that. I'm quietly optimistic about that. I honestly think, much as I hate Tony Khan's tournaments, he's got a chance here to do something good. It depends who's in it. If it's Matt Hardy, fuck off.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be 12 main eventers. I understand. Daniel Garcia will probably get a spot. There'll be guys in there who were there to lose. Lance Archer type. Jay Lethal will probably be in there. He fucking loves him. But I'm hoping that might turn me around. That might be a nice little. It's like Robert says, it's Tony's last ditch attempt to win Booker of the Year. Just book a tournament, but actually do it good for once. Quietly optimistic on that. This might age badly.
Simple thing, lads who can wrestle. Just put that. Not fucking scrubs. People who, in some way, mean something or have something to prove in the tournament.
And in a world where we've lost the ranking system in AEW, this tournament gives the opportunity to create that ranking system a bit more organically and set up future feuds as well, doesn't it? So like when I heard the words tournament, I was like, oh no, but then when I saw what that was, I was like, oh great, I'm like optimistic about this as something to take forward, as I clearly am very optimistic about AEW these days. Another one adds to it.
If Drillista goes there, I'm fucking kicking off.
If he wins with his brand new dance move that distracts the ref and then causes a DQ finish, then I'm out as well. Clean finishes, please, Tone. Send the road agents home. Just let them have the rest of the winter off. They're fine. They don't need it. You can come up.
There's enough of them. If you look on the fucking roster pages, there's like 30 of the bastards. You can't move for them. They're gonna have their own company based on just fucking producers.
Well, maybe we'll know more about that by next week to talk in a bit more detail. But yeah, as always, thank you, Gareth, for jumping on. Hopefully, everybody has enjoyed. Follow Gareth on Twitter at GRAPPL Gareth. Anything else to say, Gareth?
That's the first time my Twitter's ever been plugged on this podcast. Don't follow me. follow at GRAPPL Pod on Twitter.
There we go. JP?
All roads lead to patreon.com/grapple. Listen to month 1, WWE ECW. This weekend, we're going to be seeing Bretro. Also going to be recording King of the Mountain, Simon Mulvaney's mixtape choice of the Milestone series, which I was today years old when I learned that existed, which shows you about the gaps in my Ring of Honor knowledge as well. But it contains some CZW, which I do know a little bit about, and I'm fucking a little bit excited about that. And hopefully that's a precursor to another series that we'll also do on the Patreon. So patreon.com/grapple, youtube.com/@grapple. I don't know why you do that. They're weird.
It's annoying. It used to be /C/Grapple. I hated that. So at Grapple's better. And yeah, on that note, quick promo. No weekend show this week for patrons, or unlikely to be one with us having just done the full year preview, but should be a retro in its place and plenty of content where that came from for everybody. But yeah, in the meantime, thank you, live patrons, for tuning in. Thank you to our Kings of the Mountain. And yeah, thank you all. We will catch you again next week.
Bye.
See ya.
Good night, all. We're back.
Waiting game.